leaders of the electronics and semiconductor industry, investors, academics, and friends. Semiconductors are playing a critical role in the world in more ways than we can imagine.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Minister Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji is here. Eldrigu Namaskara. Good morning, everyone. Encouraged by the resounding success of the first SemiconIndia Future Design Roadshow at Gandhinagar last October, on behalf of the entire organizing team, I'm Shankar Prakash, extending a very, very warm welcome to all participants at the second SemiconIndia Future Design Roadshow here at IISc in Bangalore. A very hearty welcome to all of you. Tamagelrigu swagata, suswagata. As we are all aware, the Government of India has announced a very comprehensive policy to develop a thriving semiconductor ecosystem in the country. The SemiconIndia Future Design Initiative aims to encourage entrepreneurs to design and develop complex semiconductor IPs, system on chip, and products to achieve self-reliance and aim for technology leadership in semiconductor design to enable India to be an important part of the global semiconductor supply chains. It's indeed a matter of great pleasure that we have with us the Honorable Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology and Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India, Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji amongst us. On behalf of all of us, it's my pleasure to request him to kindly come over to the stage. I would request the Professor Govindan Ragarajan, Director IISc Bengaluru, and also Madam Sunita Verma, DG CDAC, to kindly bring the Honorable Minister onto the stage and felicitate him. So please put your hands together and welcome the Honorable Minister. A very hearty welcome once again to the Honorable Minister, Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar. Thank you, sir, for accepting the felicitation. At this juncture, I would like to call on stage Jaya Jagdish ji from AMD India, Chitra Hariharan from Intel, and Bhavna Sethi from Micron to kindly come over here and join the dignitaries on the dais to move to the left-hand side of the stage and light the lamp. The lighting of the lamp, as we are all aware, will give us that extra strength which is required to move from strength to strength and making India and the purpose of the SemiconIndia Future Design Initiative a success. Let's give a huge round of applause for this all-important moment. Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, semiconductors are indeed essential elements in electronic devices in a number of sectors, including compute, mobility, communication, and automotive. Although India is not yet a major supplier in the global semiconductor supply chains, it is, however, one of the leading countries with an exceptional talent pool for semiconductor design that produces up to 20% of the world's semiconductor design engineers, while electronic product design and development and indigenous design of semiconductor IPs and system on chip are important and paramount to power India's fastest growing digital economy, semiconductor manufacturing is also a strategic and critical technology that will have a multiplier effect across different sectors of the economy with deeper integration to the global value chains. As we are all aware, the semiconductor policy with an outlay of $10 billion offers incentives for all forms of semiconductor manufacturing, including semiconductor fabs, display fabs, compound semiconductor fabs, and ATMP. For encouraging domestic companies to develop semiconductor chips, the Semicon policy also provides for financial incentives under the Design-Linked Incentive Scheme DLI with an aim to offset entry barriers in the semiconductor design space by nurturing and supporting 100 domestic companies, startups, and MSMEs working in this domain. The Future Design initiative aims to encourage startups, MSMEs, and domestic companies to develop IPs and SOCs for import substitution, target export markets, and to become an integral part of the global semiconductor supply chains. Well, at this juncture, let's listen to the Honorable Prime Minister of our country, Shri Narendra Modi ji, on the government's vision of the semiconductor design ecosystem in the country. Let's hear it. A huge round of applause for the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister, and let's have his video message.
Namaskar, my colleagues from the Council of Ministers, leaders of the electronics and semiconductor industry, investors, academics, and friends. Semiconductors are playing a critical role in the world in more ways than we can imagine. It is our collective aim to establish India as one of the key partners in global semiconductor supply chains. We want to work in this direction based on the principle of high-tech, high-quality, and high reliability. India is headed for robust economic growth. We have the world's fastest growing startup ecosystem. New unicorns are coming up every few weeks. India's own consumption of semiconductors is expected to cross $80 billion by 2026 and $110 billion by 2030. We have an exceptional semiconductor design talent pool, which makes up to 20% of the world's semiconductor design engineers. Almost all of the top 25 semiconductor design companies have their design and R&D centers in our country. We recently announced SemiconIndia program with a total outlay of over $10 billion. This program aims to provide financial support to companies investing in semiconductors, display manufacturing, and design ecosystem. We are aware that in order for a semiconductor ecosystem to flourish, it is necessary to ensure adequate support from the government. Allow me to put our approach in the language of semiconductors itself. In earlier times, industries were ready to do their work, but the government was like a NOT gate. When any input flows into the NOT gate, it gets negated. So many needless compliances and no ease of doing business. But we understand that the government must be like the end gate. While the industry works hard, the government works even harder. I would like to assure you that we will continue to support the industry in future as well. A new world order is forming and we must seize this opportunity. We have worked hard over the last few years to create an environment that encourages growth. India has the appetite for tech and risk-taking. We have put the odds in your favor as far as possible through a supportive policy environment. We have shown that India means business. Now it is over to you. Friends, I look forward to practical suggestions from all of you about how we can move towards an India that is hub for semiconductor for the world in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Well, indeed, after those inspiring words from the Honorable Prime Minister, sit back for a few minutes. We'll take you through the SemiconIndia story through a short video. Let's have the video, please.
What will propel India into its decade? Innovation, technology, the power of young Indians. It is all this and more. As technology becomes an integral part of our everyday life and India rapidly grows its electronics capabilities, so will the demand for semiconductors. The building block of tech increased manyfold. In December 2021, the Government of India announced a special program for the development of semiconductors in India with incentives worth rupees 76,000 crores. Driven by cutting-edge innovation, brilliant minds and unbridled opportunities in a conducive environment, India's semiconductor story is emerging from decades of being ignored into an ecosystem with which the world is partnering fast.
We have an exceptional semiconductor design talent pool, which makes up to 20% of the world's semiconductor design engineers. Almost all of the top 25 semiconductor design companies have their design and R&D centers in our country.
A few years ago, hardware-driven performance moved tech. But today, the game lies in design and innovation for the next generation of computing and communication performance. With this in mind, future growth in computing performance will come from semiconductor and electronics systems design innovation.
Dholera is positioned to become a huge electronics innovation hub. आप जानते ही हैं कि धोलेरा में भारत का फर्स्ट सेमीकंडक्टर प्लांट बनेगा एंड उस सेमीकंडक्टर प्लांट में लेगेसी नोड्स और एडवांस नोड्स दोनों होंगे तो हमारे ऑटोमोटिव सेगमेंट हमारे कंप्यूट सेगमेंट और मोबिलिटी सेगमेंट को काफी सारा वहां से सेमीकंडक्टर सप्लाई होगा.
With the world's fastest growing startup culture committed to establishing a vibrant electronics and semiconductor ecosystem for the benefit of the entire world, the road ahead for India is filled with promise. Its ambition is to see India-based startups reimagining, developing and co-developing automotive, mobility and computing devices and cores for the coming wave of technological innovation and disruption.
The SemiconIndia program is going to be a game changer for product companies like us. This program will help us create the next generation of RF IPs that will make India a leader in 6G.
We're looking to partner with AI startups to build data centers, new AI applications, and share what we know about next generation AI hardware and software.
I'm committed to participate in it and take this vision, mission forward for India to become a leading semiconductor nation. I'm also excited about the opportunity for the entrepreneurs to participate in contributing towards design and leveraging the design-linked incentives.
Over a period of 15 years, Sankhya has raised institutional investment monies from marquee investors around the world. Now we are part of the famed Tata Group. And if someone with limited resources and intellect, as we could do, I'm sure you could do better.
Today, India has emerged as a tech leader with more and more opportunities for young Indians to pursue and succeed. The next wave of innovation in semiconductor devices can and must be architected and designed by our startups. India's rich demographic advantage, abundant talent, skilled workforce, and commitment to responsible economic growth for the betterment of humanity, India is opening up to become the global semiconductor hub. Its burgeoning domestic demand and proven ability to deliver as a trusted global supply chain partner offer unparalleled opportunities in the semiconductor industry. Come, be a part of New India's Techade. Come, be a SemiconIndia's future design startup.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk about a gentleman who is the member of the Union Council of Ministers. He holds twin responsibilities as Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology and Skill Development and Entrepreneurship in the country. And please note, he is a former chip designer and one of the pioneers of India's earliest and largest mobile networks. He is the chairman of the steering committee, SemiconIndia Future Design, and is executing the Indian government's mission for building $1 trillion tech economy in India by 2025-26, and also working towards making India a global skills hub. I'm pretty sure. Please put your hands together and let's welcome the Honorable Minister to share his vision on catalyzing the next generation startups in the semiconductor design space.
What am I pressing? Good morning all. Thank you, Professor Rangarajan, for hosting this very important program. Thank you all for spending some time with us this morning. I certainly can assure you, for those who are interested in electronics and semiconductors, and in particular in technology in general, this 1 hour that you spend, or these few hours that you'll spend today, would be time well spent in terms of improving your knowledge, awareness. I'm very confident about that. But if in addition, this program, this discussion lights a spark in you to embark on an entrepreneurial journey to build the next generation of devices and products and systems, that would be an effort well spent, and therefore I am very optimistic that this would be a useful couple of hours for you. So when I meet youngsters and entrepreneurs around the country, I talk about New India, I talk about Young India, and I talk about really the way forward. Am I pressing this side? Or? There are many gray-haired people in the room. I spot a few. I managed to cover mine up very carefully, whatever little is left of it. But for the ones that are not gray-haired and therefore have a large part of your life still ahead of you, I want to make this proposition to you. I want to make this point to you that we are living in certainly one of the most exciting times in the history of independent India. And we are at an inflection point as a nation in general. We are at an inflection point in particular in the innovation and technology ecosystem. And for those who have made it your life's mission to do something in technology, I certainly will point out to you that we are living in an opportunity-rich era. I'll just run through a few slides that lay the background before I get into semicon and semicon design as an opportunity. Some of the stuff you've read, you've known. you've heard through your own friends and colleagues. We are certainly one of the most exciting places in the world today in terms of innovation, in terms of startups. I won't bore you with the numbers, but I can assure you that around the world, whether you're a political leader or whether you're a technology leader, India is firmly on the radar, on their radars, as a growing power in innovation and in the digital economy, global digital economy in general. Just by way of how far we have traveled in the last 8-9 years, I use this very simple analogy of where we are in the mobile phone space, the mobile compute space, if you want to use a technical phrase. In 2014, we used to import up to 80 to 85% of all the mobile devices consumed in India. And in 2022, 2023, we manufacture about 100% and more of all the mobile devices consumed in India. That is the distance that we have traveled. In 2014, India was not just an outlier, but an absolute non-entity in the world, in the digital supply chain, the global value chain for mobile devices. And this year, we would have exported 90,000 crores, and next year, the mobile device would be amongst the top 10 exports from India, crossing 1 lakh crores of exports. And we're talking about Apple phones, we're talking about Samsung phones, global brands being made in India and exported to the world's consumers and world's enterprises. I've spoken about this. One of the tests of the innovation ecosystem is not just how we view it and how you and I, we have a vested interest in patting ourselves on the back and saying, no, no, we are great, we are great, we are great, we are good, we are good. For several decades, we did that and got nowhere. So we are, one of the tests of that, or one of the indicators of that, is how the outside world and how commercial investors see our innovation ecosystem. And this number is just to show you that we are the largest recipient of foreign direct investment into innovation amongst any country in the world. That is the milestone that we have reached. And these are just some press notes for all of those who spend too much time in textbooks and not reading the media, which is not a bad habit, but these are some views, third-party views. Again, there is a tendency for us to look to outside views as a validation of where we are and where we are going, which again is not a bad thing because it certainly gives you a reference point. Pat Gelsinger, who used to be my ex-boss at Intel, visited India in 2022, met the Prime Minister, met me, and when I proposed to him that Intel explore India for a fab, he said, look, if you had told me this a few years ago, I would have laughed at you. And I'm certainly not laughing at you, and I'm exploring it today. And he went on to say that I think I'm very deeply optimistic about India in the coming decade. Bob Sternfels is McKinsey's CEO. He said, the next decade is not just India's decade, the next century is India's century. Michael Spence, again, there are economists and there are economists, and then there are Nobel Prize winning economists. His quote is, India is the outstanding performer now as the global order is undergoing these tectonic changes. And particularly close friend of mine, Omar bin Sultan Al Olama, was the digital minister of the UAE. He said recently, the future of technology will have Indian fingerprints on everything and everywhere. Just to give you a sense of how the world is looking at India today, the Honorable Prime Minister talked about a new world order. I want to report to you, if you don't have that information already with you, that there is certainly a new world order emerging in electronics and semiconductors around the world. That new world order is taking on even faster accelerated transformation post-COVID. And I have a way of summarizing this. There are 3 trends that are clearly visible to all of us, and just using common sense. Digitalization is accelerating. You are seeing segments of the economy economies around the world, governments around the world digitizing rapidly. And the second trend is the Indian innovation ecosystem is coming of age. It is maturing. It is very confident today, much more than it has ever been before. And it is at an inflection point in terms of growth and diversification. And the third most important issue, or as important issue, is that for the world, India is becoming a trusted partner. Indian enterprises, Indian startups are becoming a trusted partner in terms of delivering global talent, global products, digital products and services as well. So all these three things makes India and Indian enterprises and Indian innovation ripe to be a significant and powerful player in this emerging new world order in semiconductors and electronics. So what is SemiconIndia? Let's launch straight into it. The case is very clear that India is after the North Americas and China, India will be the single biggest consumer of semiconductors in the world. The segments that are driving this demand are the obvious ones, which is compute. There is, the compute. There is mobility, and the new emerging segments that are fast growth segments of automobile and industrial. You heard the Honorable Prime Minister say his vision, and he is absolutely steadfast in his confidence that India will be a significant player in the global value chains. And it is that reason that in December 2021, very quickly he moved to announce the SemiconIndia 76,000 crore program. This is broadly what SemiconIndia is trying to achieve and is making considerable progress. The manufacturing side, which is the fab, and you will soon hear about a fab or fabs coming up in India in the manufacturing and packaging segments. But what we are here today to discuss is the innovation side, on the design side. In the SemiconIndia program, there is an outlay of 1,000 crores for designs to support design startups. And there is another 1,500 to 2,000 crores on semiconductor research, which doesn't show up here. And so the point that the Honorable Prime Minister made, and I would like to reiterate, is simply this coming decade is India Techade, a decade full of technology opportunities for India and young Indians. This is the team that is sort of working together to implement the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister and the government. It has academics, it has people from the industry, leaders from the industry, and it has people from the finance sector as well. We have academic advisory committees in every region of India to help, I don't like using the word mentor, but help along startups or those who want to start startups. The vision of this future design program is really to design for the future. As I said, there is a new world order emerging in semiconductor, which is not just geopolitical or not just about supply chain, but is also about where innovation will be headquartered, what are the jurisdictions where innovation will grow, and the next generation of chips will be designed. So the SemiconIndia future design vision is really fivefold, and I won't read it out, but you certainly get the gist of it, that this is about creating innovation in semiconductor design, creating next generation IP, next generation devices and chips, and having the SemiconIndia program catalyze hundreds and thousands of young, not so young, old Indian minds to get into this area and build startups. The areas that we think, and these are just suggestive, but we certainly believe these are high growth, high areas in which Indian startups can shine, which is the automotive and industrial electronics space, the wireless communication, the mobility space, and the computing and intelligent computing space, including the cloud and the edge. These are all areas in which There is going to be considerable design innovation and disruption to the status quo, and this is where we believe startups can play a big role. Indian startups can play a big role. I think I read an article in today's paper, I think it was the Times of India, where somebody makes a case that Moore's law is plateauing out, and therefore the performance increases in the future will not just be from manufacturing or processes or the size of the transistor, it would be equally from both software optimization as well as the design innovation around the devices and products and systems. That again reiterates the focus on SemiconIndia's future design program, or the importance of that. An important part of the Semicon strategy is that India is almost all in supporting the RISC-V ISA, the open architecture, and there is a comprehensive plan that the government of India is supporting in creating devices and systems built around RISC-V. And we think that one of the advantages of this will also be, one of the fallouts or outcomes of this will be that India can also be a RISC-V talent hub for the world. This is the DIR-5, which is the Digital India RISC-V roadmap, where between 22 and 25 we will have a large number of devices that are coming out, being taped out, and getting into design wins with systems and products. These are being developed at various places with startups, with CDAC, which is the Government of India organization. And there are two families of processors here that are being developed, the Vega and the Shakti. Quick 3 slides. I'll just take you through. These are all the startups that are currently in the ecosystem. So those of you who think that this is a brand new area and there are no examples or no peers for you to compare yourself to or to benchmark yourself or learn from, there are a large number of Indian startups that are increasingly entering this space. One of the opportunities, apart from doing an ab initio device design, is also the opportunity to work with global majors and do co-development of IPs, co-development of chips and design. And the proposition that I make to the global majors, some of whom are represented here today, is that by working with Indian startups, global semiconductor majors extend their ability to innovate beyond the horizon. And so therefore, Indian startups are a way of extending, and there is a phrase in battlefield and air warfare called beyond visual range. So I use a phrase here called the beyond innovation range. This is an ability for the global majors to expand their ability to R&D and innovate beyond their innovation range, or beyond the conventional innovation range. And so therefore, partnerships, these are all companies that have agreed to work with startups. They are headquartered in India. They have large design and development and families of chips and devices that they already support and design for. And so they are all available to co-develop and joint ownership of IPR. This is the demand side of devices in India. There's a fast-growing ecosystem of EMSs and electronics manufacturers and electronics brands in the country, including Indian and global. So this is really, in a nutshell, what the ecosystem of opportunity is for a future design startup. One of the general, and I'm just going to take you through a few slides that talk about what we are doing to enable this. One is clearly in the academic and the higher education system, we are implementing from this year onwards almost a brand new curriculum, a curriculum that was scripted and architected by a task force headed by Madam Jaya Jagdish of AMD, which has gone into implementation. So a large number of universities and colleges will have new degrees, new electives, new certification programs. In BLSI, Government of India will work to creating labs and lab infrastructure, and we are actively working with fab companies to create on-the-job training type of internships as well for students specializing in semiconductors. The The vision, of course, of the Honorable Prime Minister is that that India can become, and amongst you, many of you can become, talent that will be deployed not just for the Indian semiconductor ecosystem, but also for the global semiconductor ecosystem. What are the other enabling ecosystems that you should be aware of? We are very shortly going to create an India Semiconductor Research Center, which will be, over the years, the Prime Minister's vision is that you have ITRI in Taiwan, you have IMEC in Europe, you have Albany in the US, or MIT's Microelectronics Center. And in India, there will be a comparable ISRC, which will be a private industry-led, industry-integrated research center that will be looking at cutting-edge research on semiconductors, ranging from process, manufacturing, manufacturing technologies, process technologies, and so on and so forth, the full gamut. And the institution will work in turn with institutions like Indian Institute of Science, IITs, NITs, and private universities from across the country to create an ecosystem of research and applications and intellectual property. The second enabling ecosystem for entrepreneurs is the SCL, which is an old fab that the Government of India has owned and owns for several years. It is being modernized and it is being converted, pivoted into a research fab, which will be co-located with the ISRC. And there will be a research fab as well as a high-end prototyping fab or limited volume production fab. On future skills, I've already spoken about. We will certainly, our ambition to create amongst all of you the best talented VLSI talent in the world. The other enabling ecosystem is a chip-in, which is being launched today. Is a one-stop center for chip designers all across the country. So if you're a small startup, you have a design device, you've managed to get it funded, you've created the design, and you want it fabbed. You don't have to go chasing after TSMC or chasing after Intel Foundry or Global Foundries. You just approach chip-in, SemiconIndia chip-in, and they will in turn work to getting you the capacity in the fabs to get your product prototyped or manufactured. So design funding, prototyping, manufacturing, and then the talent research ecosystem around that. The last and fairly important, I'm not sure why it's in a black background, but it's not supposed to be morbid like this. But the last and most important, as important or powerful, is what we are launching in March, which is called the India AI program. You've all heard about ChatGPT and the disruptions that it is causing. So we are launching India AI and the largest, almost the world's largest India datasets program. And that will in turn catalyze the intelligent compute, AI compute, device and system design ecosystem in the future design space. So that was my presentation, that was my marketing pitch, that was my proposition. The time is clearly now. This is the time to be a design startup in the semiconductor space. And for all those electronics majors and those who studied electronics and had strayed off the path of electronics and gone and done programming or IT, this is the time to get back and discover the truth and the satisfaction of doing some real electronics design, system design, and device design. Not that I say anything bad about IT, it's also part of our ministry, and I will have a separate presentation to encourage you for that. But certainly, I think semiconductors, having spent some years in that, is a deeply challenging but deeply satisfying space. And yes, it is not for everybody, but it is those brave souls who want to enter the space of semiconductor design and create success and make yourself proud, make the country proud, that we are seeking out. And we will continue to engage and work with many of you and those of you are interested. And I have even suggested that at IISc, that we will have amongst you, those of you who are interested, have a closer, smaller meeting between you, the global majors who are open to co-development, as well as the companies and organizations that are consumers of devices, chips, and solutions and systems, to have a much more detailed discussion about where the demand lies and where the opportunities lie. So I will end here. It's a nice line there, million chips, billion dreams. And we seek, and I sort of appeal to you to break out of the normal and explore an opportunity in semiconductor design. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we are all aware, semiconductor design and manufacturing requires specialized skills and EDA tools which constitute a big part of the total cost. While India has a huge talent pool of highly skilled semiconductor designers to offset the barriers of entry due to expensive EDA tools, the Government of India is creating a unique facility, the Chip-in Center at CDAC, Bangalore. It is one of its kind, unique facility offering plethora of EDA tools supporting multiple design flows to bring the chip design infrastructure at the doorsteps of the semiconductor design community in the country. And it is indeed a centralized design facility hosting the most advanced EDA tools for entire chip design cycle. It also aims to provide aggregation services for fabrication and packaging of designs at various foundries. The Chip-in Center will also help to provide trainings and mentorship on design flows by industry professionals. So let's take a look at the various services that will be provided by Chip-in Center at CDAC, Bangalore.
SemiconIndia FutureDesign Chip-in Center, catalyzing chip designing in India. The Indian semiconductor market has been gaining momentum since the last 1 decade, and design in India will be equally important as Make in India to contribute to India's fast-growing digital economy.
Almost all of the top 25 semiconductor design companies have the design and R&D centers in our country.
The global semiconductor market is anticipated to reach $820 billion by 2028. It is envisioned to transform India into a semiconductor hub, including semiconductor design.
For us in India, the approach to catalyzing the semiconductor ecosystem, seeking out its growth, seeking out the expansion, is a very, very calibrated strategic roadmap of growing the digital economy into $1 trillion digital economy by 2025-26.
Chip-in Center is established at Bangalore as a first-of-its-kind initiative by Government of India, providing opportunities to startups, MSMEs and academia for semiconductor chip design. Chip-in Center removes barriers to enter chip design for young entrepreneurs by offering facilities from design to fabrication support in multi-project wafer (MPW) by enabling access to SCL and overseas foundries. Chip-in provides centralized EDA design tools and IPs, fab compliance checks, validation and integration of designs, enablement of packaging of fabricated chips, enablement of characterization and prototyping in a centralized manner, mentoring researchers and startups for chip design, virtual prototyping lab at NILIT Calicut, facilitating remote of high-end electronics, hardware, diagnostic equipment and FPGA board to startup and industry. Calling upon all the semiconductor professionals from startups, industry and academia to make India from chip taker to chip maker and trigger future wave of semiconductor startups and unicorns towards fulfilling India's aspiration to become a major player in the global semiconductor ecosystem.
Well, at this juncture, I would like to invite on stage Sri Raja Subramaniam, Country Director of Synopsys India, Mr. Ruchir Dikshit, the Country Manager of Siemens EDA, and also Mr. Ajay Pratap Singh, Senior Manager, Cadence Design Systems. Onto the dais, and Ladies and gentlemen, please note that they have pledged their support for Chip-in Center to create a national EDA tool grid under the SemiconIndia Future Design Initiative. I would request the Honorable Minister to kindly give a mementos to them first and congratulate them. I could hear only one section of the crowd applauding. What about others? Because they have dedicated themselves for this all-important SemiconIndia Future Design Initiative. Thank you very much. I would request all of you to kindly stay back because we'll have a Q&A session in your presence, and the mics will come to you, and you can ask the questions to the Honorable Minister. You can raise your hand and you can ask the question to the Honorable Minister and the experts on stage. Generally in India, the first question will be the tough one. After that, there will be a barrage of questions, I know. So who will be the first one to ask any question? Yeah. Al hogi nodi hinde mic kodi alli. Yeah. Yes. Please introduce yourself and you can.
Hi, my name is Sachin Garg. I have been in the IT industry for some time, and I was initially at CDAC also. So this question has something to do differently. We have been talking about semiconductors, we have been talking about large nodes and all. However, I have been talking to a lot of people, and I have been talking about the very basics, passives. You know, the SMT, resistors and capacitors, and it seems that we have actually hollowed out our capacity of building those in India. I'm just wondering, what is the government strategy, or is there a plan to actually get back that whole business, which in volume terms would be huge, though possibly not in value, but is an important component of the entire ecosystem. So I'm just wondering what is the status and what are our plans here?
So my answer is, first of all, you're taking away time from the conversation on semiconductors. Those are not semiconductors. But to not duck your question, yes, we are acutely aware of the fact that leading up to 2014, the electronics and the electronics component industry had been hollowed out and it needs rebuilding. We are steadily rebuilding the electronics segment, as you saw in my presentation. And the component, which is what we call the deepening the electronics ecosystem, is certainly on our list of priorities to do. But our focus is really to get the broadening of multiple platforms, multiple categories of electronics manufacture, in a sense catalyze and reach critical mass, and parallelly build the component ecosystem. An important part of the component ecosystem is the semiconductor ecosystem.
Go ahead. Good morning, sir. I'm a faculty from engineering, Government Engineering College. My name is Krishna Ananda. Sir, as you said now, for all these enabling technologies or anything, the human resource is most important. And since our students, especially engineering students, as you said rightly, many of our electronics background students will go to Java or Python or any other programming sectors because of the hardship they face during their curriculum, especially for the laboratories. Because without the tool knowledge, it will be very difficult for them to even understand the basics of this VLSI backend designs. So I expect some of the companies to really help out, because even the tools are very costly. As well, many of the colleges cannot afford to even purchase, and they give you like 3-year license. Again, you have to renew it, another 3-year license. So many managements or many government institutions cannot afford to even buy it. So can there be a government and industry initiative to help out the students? And there is it's like a big nut to crack for the student, especially in VLSI designs. So the academic structure should be little modified and made student friendly so that our systems can encourage students to go into this field. That's my request also. Thank you, sir.
So let me just respond that we don't intend to implement this vision of our Prime Minister with any hands tied behind our back. That is why if you look at the enabling ecosystem slides that I talked about, I spoke specifically to the issue of talent, and I spoke specifically to the issue of what we are doing in the higher education ecosystem to enable creation of the talent. Our ambitions are that in the next 2 years, there will be a minimum of 85,000 high quality, high caliber, global standard talent in India. And we will create that by not just re-architecting the curriculum, but also building the labs and on-the-job training capabilities within our higher education ecosystem. So nothing we are doing today is going to miss any element that is required to be successful. So you will see as we roll this out.
Good morning, sir. I'm Akash Kulipara. I work in sci-fi today, but I also work on an open source community which is called as Wiser Folks, and we make an open source software that is called as Cyancore, that is for embedded systems only. So my question is, you have told a very good plan for silicon side and mostly in the VLSI side. What about the enabling software? So I heard that there's a Bahar OS, which is again Android offshoot, but how are we planning to make India more of software capable and standalone system?
Yeah, so I think we are mixing up this meeting into making it a broader discussion, and for that, if the director of IISc invites me back, we can have a broader discussion. But look, like I said, we have a fairly comprehensive, well thought through strategy. The goal the Honorable Prime Minister has given us is clear, and we certainly know what the moving parts for those are. And we have a focus on each of those moving parts, whether it's ranging from talent to laboratories, from the soft side of the platform to the components and the embedded, from manufacturing to design. So we have a roadmap. I think when you invite me back here for a separate conversation about mobile devices and the future, I'm happy to discuss what is our view on Android, iOS, the dominance of those two operating environments, how do we crack that, how do we create a much more open, trusted environment for mobile devices that is much more India-centric, and supporting language hooks and so on and so forth. So we know that, but I think this is probably the wrong forum to have a detailed discussion on that.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, all. Myself, Prithvideepam, currently an engineering student. I just want to ask a simple question. And we recently got a news that 5.9 million tons of lithium have been got in the Jammu and Kashmir region. And we also know that it is also known as white gold. Actually, it is used for the manufacturing of the batteries. And current government policies is showing interest in building the electronic vehicles and all, manufacturing of it. So what are your stance on it?
No, so if you look at the SemiconIndia future design, that one slide, and we talked about where we see these devices or these systems being innovated, which segments. Automobile is clearly one segment. You have a fireside chat with a leader from a company called Renaissance who will certainly enlighten you more, Mr. Shailesh Chittipati, which is that cars are becoming more and more data centers on wheels. The siliconization of an automobile is today at an unprecedented pace. So given the fact that you are effectively now going to end up driving a data center with 4 wheels and a steering wheel, certainly batteries, storage, that technology, and therefore materials that go into those storage technologies are very, very relevant. And India wants to be a leader in that emerging space of EVs and siliconized automobiles, if you want to call it that. And certainly that discovery of reserves at a time where the world depends so much on China for battery, to catalyze a domestic battery industry and storage industry is very, very positive.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Honorable Minister. This is Karthik Ramaswamy, and I've been working in this industry for nearly 22 years. My question to you is, sir, one of the major barriers for startup design is the high EDA tool cost. I noticed in one of your slides you mentioned that there is a chip-in program which gives EDA tools access. Can you please elaborate on it? Is it free of cost or is it a nominal charge? Thanks to you, sir.
I think the CDAC people are here and there will be a broader discussion on chip-in later in the day. But what we are doing is providing, I'll tell you the broad construct of future design. There is a certain, let's say not resistance, or certain, the momentum isn't there for investors, commercial investors, to support and bootstrap startups in the semiconductor design space, the device design space, or IP design space. So the government is providing capital, saying here is money, up to 100 crores, if you have a really good idea, and the money would be in proportion to how great the idea is, of course. That, along with chip-in and other access, we are continuing to negotiate with the EDA companies. If we can create common service centers for EDA tools in the cloud, etc., etc., that allows you to bootstrap with minimum risk and put you in a position where you can then go to the commercial market environment and raise capital with more than just an idea. So that is the broad DNA of the Future Design DLI program, which is we want to encourage you if you have an idea, if you have a design, if you have an innovation. Government of India will provide you the capital, provide you access to these common facilities, allow you to gateway into fabbing the prototype or limited quantities of it. And then after that, if you think you have it in the device to make you a unicorn or whatever con is the latest fashion, you go raise the money with something substantive in your hand. That is the idea.
So good morning. So I'm here on your left side. So I'm Subhash, basically chip architect from working for SuperQ Technologies, India. So I wanted to ask on advanced process nodes coming to India. So I see a lot of fabs coming around the world, but since we also have a downturn right now, so there has been oversupply of chips, right? And also I see many tech companies are laying off thousands and thousands of employees. So I just wanted to ask how these things play out in future. There are a lot of fabs coming up around the world, not just in India. So finally we are going to compete in global market with big players. So I wanted to know how things play out for India. So what your strategy on it, and is there a oversupply of chips?
So if you had carefully seen my presentation, I've broken the semicon ecosystem into broadly 3 buckets. One is the manufacturing bucket, and then manufacturing, packaging, verification. And the second one is this whole design and innovation piece. I personally feel, and I feel strongly about this, that the way this new semiconductor order is evolving, that an overcapacity of manufacturing in the world plays to our advantage. Because where you cannot create overcapacity just by investing money is talent and innovation. And that is what we are strong at. So therefore, the evolving semiconductor order plays to our strength, that we have hundreds and thousands of young Indians, old Indians, grey-haired, black-haired Indians who want to really innovate. And at a time when the landscape of devices is undergoing such dramatic change, the landscape of systems are undergoing such dramatic change, innovation is going to be the one that will step in there. So don't get distracted by how many fabs are coming up in Taiwan, how many are coming up in the US, how many are coming up in Ireland, because we have a tendency otherwise to keep jumping up and down and saying, where is our fab, where is our fab? We will get our fab, but certainly our fab is not going to be competing with TSMC's 5 nanometer, 2 nanometer, or Intel's Ohio plant or the Global Foundry plant. And frankly, overcapacity is good for those who are designing chips and want to get those produced. Because overcapacity means lower cost of production. So I don't see this as a problem. I see this as something that plays to our strength. What we are going to be good at, in addition to manufacturing and packaging and verification, is certainly on the design innovation side, and which is why we are here today talking about future design, and we are not talking about fabs.
Hello. This is Vijayanand, sir. This is Vijayanand here. So my name is Vijayanand from TriSpace Technologies. So you mentioned that it's a long-haul drive for electronic semiconductors compared to IT industries. So we are a startup into this area, and a lot of hurdles to cross actually for us. And we have succeeded so far in getting about a dozen patents on power optimization on mobile SoCs, and we have been acknowledged by a lot of leading companies. But the hurdles, a lot of hurdles, we are not able to market. Challenges are there. It's not, it's a complex thing to make a sales of it. But some recognition, like for example, DSIR in-house R&D recognition, there itself we are facing challenge that the company is not sufficiently staffed, so we are unable to give in-house R&D recognition. So those kind of hurdles can government help clear actually?
I'm not sure what the hurdles is. I know that if you are a startup today who has on your own done a device, to create a market for the device after the device is designed and not having a design win is always a difficult thing, because the biggest consumers in India for semiconductor or chips are invariably either the government companies or they are multinationals who have their own bill of materials and they have own suppliers, etc., etc. So that is broadly your problem.
No, actually, my area, the approach we have taken to this problem of we are solving the problem of battery life extension of device usage, right. And we are approaching via firmware method, and then we are slowly going into this chip making aspect also to coupled along with our firmware, so complete product we are making. Okay. So now we want some visibility at least. To get that visibility, DSA... So that
I think I said this in my second to last slide, that one of the things that the ISM India Semiconductor Mission is going to do is to create these forums where the design house or the chip IP owner will be able to engage, facilitated by the government, the consume side of that, the industry side of it, that we will facilitate it. We will give you the ability to have FaceTime with those who want products, systems or devices. That the government of India will do. In addition, if you have a specific issue with a particular organization within the government, then there is, Sunita is here. Her team can meet you after this program, and we are happy to, I mean, that is our job. If you're a successful company and you have technology, and the question is about introducing you to the correct people who can use that technology and deploy the technology, what our mission is. So if you just engage with us, we will certainly try and introduce you to the right people.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Hello, sir. On your left, sir. Yeah, I'm Deepak from Optimus Logic. I want to thank you for conducting SemiconIndia. I want to ask you, what is the arrangement that you have with TSMC and fabs coming up in India to get the test chips from these fabs? If you want to
so that is what chip-in is. If you see that, the announcement of that, that is a single window. If you have a design and you have taped it out and you want it fabbed, you just have to go there, and whether they negotiate with TSMC or depending on who you are working with, they will then facilitate that for you.
So those facilities is already available right now, and we can...
no, if you are asking me, is there a TSMC fab in India? There's no TSMC
I'm asking if we have a facility to get the test chips from TSMC.
Yeah, the CDAC will, that's exactly what chip-in is about. Yeah. You interact with CDAC and they will interact and negotiate on your behalf with the foundry.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hello,
good morning, sir.
This is Shweta here on this side. So I work with corporates. So one of the slide you have mentioned that it's about the joint collaboration between the global leaders and the startup. And so ultimately it is about the economic flow. So what is the expectation that comes from a global leader for a startup, and what the startup can have the expectation from the global leader to really take it forward? So any specific?
No, again, I think you missed this slide. I said the future design objective is either a startup does original design for an original device or product or a chip, as the case may be, or it does co-development with, let us say, a large company, multinational company, and I'm using Renaissance name because Shailesh happens to be here, and maybe he'll jump at that invitation and say yes, that a startup can partner with Renaissance and say, we will develop co-develop an IP or a device for this particular application in India with a startup. And that is why the proposition that I keep my marketing pitch to the big companies is that you, by working with future design startups, you will extend your horizon of the innovation horizon. They have their labs, they have their R&D setup, they have the innovation labs, but by working with startup, you essentially create additional extension of your innovation ecosystem. So that is the value proposition of a future design startup.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. I'm Dr. Ravi Kiran. My quick question. Thanks for a fabulous talk. My question is whether under this program, design and fabrication of metal lens, flat lenses, dielectric lenses come under this category or not?
So at this stage, no, unless Sunita ji can figure out some language ambiguity that allows it, but I don't think so.
Good morning and Jai Hind, sir.
This will be the last question.
All right. So
I have a.
Right, so Amol here. I'm from Pune, and then our startup is like a recognized startup India, fortunately, and then I've been working in a semiconductor domain since like more than 15 years, and recently started with a startup. Now, my direct question is that is there any plan to encourage EDA startups?
Of course.
Can you elaborate more on that, and how do we have it?
Nothing to elaborate. I think if there is today a startup that wants to, in addition to doing device design, if you want to create an EDA, next-gen EDA product, we will support that. That's the answer. That your simple question, simple answer.
Thank you very much. Yeah, since you're already standing, yeah, please go ahead. Straight come to the question. Final one.
My question is that, as you said, that the market of VLSI and semiconductor will be reaching up to $80 billion by the year 2026. So considering this, there is a rapid growth. So even the fuel will be converted into electricity. So the petrol and diesel usage will be less, whereas compared to the electricity. So considering this change in the world, so what are the changes that can be made to the any defense vehicles and any other unmanned armored vehicles where the VLSI can be applied, and any other states that will be getting the manufacturing rights, and or startups that has to meet the criteria that are required to manufacture or to service in any of the defense vehicles, and what are the roles in the safety of the defense vehicles?
No, so what I understand is if a VLSI or a chip is designed with an application for an autonomous vehicle, drone.
Yes, sir.
Is that supported by future design?
Yeah.
The answer
so
is yes.
Any startup which can, what are the criteria for any startup that has to get into?
The criteria here in future design is that you should have a design, you should have a device, you should have a chip, or an EDA tool that you are proposing to build in the startup.
Yes, sir. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would request Raja Subramaniam, Ruchir Dikshit and Ajay Pratap to kindly get back to your seats, please. Well, ladies and gentlemen, after the announcement of the DLI scheme by the Government of India, various applications were received under the Design-Linked Incentive Scheme for financial and infrastructure support. Now, these applications were scrutinized through a rigorous multi-stage process with the help of experts from academia, industry and VCs involving multiple rounds of discussions and interactions. At this juncture, I would like to call upon some of these experts on the stage for the announcement of the first batch of 3 DLI applicants who have been shortlisted for support under this scheme from the first set of applications that were scrutinized. So please note a second set of applications is under scrutiny and the next lot of successful applicants will be announced very, very soon. I would now like to call upon some of these experts on the dais. Shri Soumitra Kale, Director, Engineer, Cisco, Professor Chetan Thakur, IISc, Chinnu Sendil Kumar, Managing Director, Xfinity VC, and also Ms. Pamela Kumar, DG of Telecom Standards, along with E. Magesh, DG CDAC, and Srimati Sunita Verma, GC R&D in Electronics and IT at MATE, to kindly join the Minister. Now, I would like to call upon one by one the three applicants who will be the future design startups who have been shortlisted by the experts, and they will receive a memento from the Honorable Minister. Shri Rakesh Malik, please put your hands together for Rakesh Malik, CEO of World Semi Microelectronics Private Limited, with plans to develop mixed signal microcontroller for motor control and smart power applications. Kindly go over, Mr. Malik, and receive the memento. It's a fabulous semiconductor company developing high-performance ASICs for sensors and wireless, and they are a team of analog and RF experts developing analog solution for semiconductor world. Kindly stay back, Mr. Rakesh Malik. I would now like to call upon Shri Gautam Singh, CEO Fermionic Design Private Limited. Fermionic Design plans to design and development of 4-channel beamformer IC for satellite communications and 5G antenna array system. Well, Fermionic Design is a fabulous semiconductor company developing chipsets for digital and hybrid team beamforming signal integrity products across multi-protocol communication. I would now like to call upon Vrunda Kapoorji, the CEO of DV2JS Innovation Limited. The clapping has waned. They plan to develop a low-light image sensor with a single photon detection for security surveillance and automobile cameras. And it's a startup founded in 2019. DV2JS Innovation works on research and development of indigenously made CMOS image sensors in India. Thank you very much, and let's give a huge round of applause for all of them. Thank you very much. I would request the Honorable Minister and the dignitaries to kindly take the seats in the front. But however, Rakesh Malik, Gautam Singh, and Vrunda Kapoor kindly stay back. Well, we now have an interesting fireside chat on the global opportunities for future design DLI startups. First of all, I would like to invite Mr. Shailesh Chittipeddi, the President, GM, and Board Member of Renesas Electronics. Dr. Satish, please put your hands together for Dr. Shailesh Chittipeddi, I beg your pardon, Dr. Shailesh Chittipeddi, Executive Vice President and General Manager of IoT and Infrastructure Business Unit of Renesas. I would also like to call upon Mr. Anand Ramamurthy, VP and MD of Micron India. Anand is a seasoned, well-rounded technology executive with over 2 decades of global experience, building high-performance teams, introducing flagship products, scripting executable strategies, and so on. So, hearty welcome to both of you. And now, it's all yours. Both Dr. Shailesh and Anand can start the fireside chat with the interaction with these 3 experts. See, yeah. Yeah, it'll come now, yeah. Kindly give the mics, please, yeah. Over to Dr. Shailesh and Mr. Anand. Yeah. Kindly sit down. Kindly sit down, please. I would request to kindly be seated. Please be seated, yeah.
No, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Are we all good? Okay. A very good morning to all of you, and it's wonderful to be here today celebrating some of the early wins from the government's flagship design-linked incentives. I see a lot of young faces, a lot of startups. Maybe I'll use this chance to quickly introduce Micron that I represent here in India. So Micron is a little bit of a best-kept secret, is what my global CEO, Sanjay Mehrotra, often says, because we don't talk a lot about who we are and what we do. So maybe I'll take a few minutes to kind of familiarize all of you with who we are. So we are a memory storage company. We've been in business for over 4 decades. The last revenues we had were in excess of $30 billion. We are the world's 4th largest company, headquartered surprisingly in a place called Idaho in Boise, which is known for Micron and the Lay's chips, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And Micron is probably the only North American memory storage player left out in terms of scale and size of operations. Micron also has a very strong pedigree in the area of patent and innovation, which is kind of the subtext of our discussions today. At 50,000 plus patents, we are probably the top 18, top 19, and we take this matter of position very proudly as to how we've kind of evolved and innovated in the last 4 decades of our journey. Closer to home, Micron India is a little bit of a startup of its kind because, quite honestly, we were late to the party, unlike many of our peers in India. Micron India set up operations way back in 2019, so we've been kind of in active mode for a little over 3 years. But thanks to the government's stable policy, the talent pool that the Honorable Minister talked about, and the fact that we've had so much success from many of our peers who came much before us, we've managed to grow from almost nothing to around 4,000 plus engineers and professionals in the last 3.5 years, which is one of the fastest ramps that we've seen in recent history. And more importantly, the teams that we have in Hyderabad and Bangalore have developed more than 250 patents in less than 3 years. And again, a strong testament and validation of the kind of talent that we have in the country. Our population, our employee population is almost 35% new college grads, which again is a great marker for things that we intend to do going forward in the country. I want to just pivot a little bit around 4 things that we do to encourage, incubate, and validate many of the initiatives the government of India has been taking. At Micron India, we have essentially 4 levers that we work with. Clearly, work very closely with the government of India, the honorable ministers, and MeitY and other supporting organizations in matters of policy, in matters of designing and giving our feedback based on experiences in other parts of the world. That's kind of more on the policy and policy intervention side. Like many corporates, we have Micron Ventures, which is essentially our VC firm, VC arm, which invests in startup companies. And the interesting thing that we have noticed is while Silicon Valley used to be the natural target for startups, the interest in the Southeast Asian corridor has really picked up in the last couple of years. That's the Micron Ventures part. We also have a very dedicated program called the University Research Alliance at Micron, which essentially works with the top colleges in the country. In fact, we're talking to IIT Madras, BITS Pilani. The minister talked about it in his presentation, trying to impact the curriculum and make sure that the young batch of engineers coming are much more well-versed in VLSI. And I'll tell you this, I do a lot of travel around the college circuit. The audience for many of my talks would be very thin 3-5 years back, but of late, thanks to the ISM, the momentum, the geopolitics, I see a much more enthused audience, just like we have today this morning. So the Research Alliance is an initiative to go and ensure that the young college students are well-versed in matters of design, memory, and storage applications as we hire them. And the last but the most significant part that we have within Micron is a Micron India Research Center, essentially a vertical and horizontal block. We have, and what it does is it's kind of our main conduit to work with external startups, to work with universities and researchers to ensure that we are thinking and solving problems that are probably much more beyond innovation, as the minister said in his speech. And we know that in the pursuit of daily execution, we sometimes miss out on these long-term innovations. So those are the 4 handles that we have at Micron. That's my marketing pitch on who we are and what we do. Very excited here today, and we'll have a great discussion around some of the early wins that we have from the program. At this point of time, I'll hand it over to Shailesh, my good friend.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. And thank you, first and foremost, to the minister for putting a plug in for Renaissance Technologies. Now, Anand mentioned that Micron was the quiet company. We're even quieter. But what we end up doing is acquiring companies in the India ecosystem. We were one of the first companies. The minister put the name of Steridian. And we actually worked with Steridian before it was fashionable. And the other company we worked with on the list was actually Aura Semiconductor. and we actually happen to work with them on the timing element of things. And I think right now, right, with the energy level that you have in this audience, and before I talk about Renesas and what we do as a whole, what I will tell you is, the minister was mentioning this a little bit earlier, the energy that I see every time I come into the Indian ecosystem for semiconductors is enormous. The talent base is enormous, right? And the potential for doing great stuff is enormous. What needs to happen, right, when we look at it, is more of the system and product solutions need to occur within India. This is the big difference versus the horizontal approaches of the past. What our focus at Renesas is primarily is to work with our partners, such as Sankhya Labs, which is also mentioned here, work with Tejas Networks to develop the chips that are designed by Sankhya Labs, and the platform that's developed by TCS to create a full vertical stack. And that's how you enable the ecosystems and the partnerships that occur. The Honorable Minister was actually kind enough yesterday to inaugurate our joint venture that we have with TCS, explicitly to go after more areas in the market that are actually inflection points for the industry. Whether it's you look at 5G systems, which is what companies like Tejas and Sankhya are working on, whether it's AI at either the cloud side or the endpoint side, and endpoint AI is exploding dramatically, whether it's Industry 4.0, which is where a lot of changes are occurring in the industrial landscape, where traditional industrial markets are getting disrupted, whether it is automotive, where you have a tremendous amount of change with electrification. Those are the four major segments that Renesas works on, whether it's automotive, whether it's industrial, whether it's infrastructure, or edge IoT is where the revolution is actually occurring. What should startups in this landscape be focused on, right? Focus on the inflection point. Now, one of the startups here is working on microcontrollers. Just take a simple example of microcontrollers. In the past, the focus was always on ARM-based microcontrollers and the support with that system. Now, the Honorable Minister mentioned about RISC-V. Why is that disruptive? Because now you don't have to worry about royalties anymore. You're taking things to either a 32-bit RISC microcontroller, or you can take it to the next level with a 64-bit microprocessor, which can be used for gateway applications. So that's a simple example. And Brinda here and I were talking for just a couple of minutes in terms of the image sensor technologies, right? She's developed that for very low light applications. Now that's a great technology that can be a differentiator in the landscape over time. What does a company like that need? The ability to scale. What do companies like Renesas provide? The ability to scale without the investment that is needed to grow that business. Now, the ministry has done a tremendous job in terms of seeding the ecosystem, whether it's the foundries and some of the initiatives that he spoke about, to get it all together. But at the end of the day, it's the innovation and the ideas for creating the new products that is going to drive the Indian landscape. So I would encourage the people in the audience to think more broadly about more complete system solutions, as opposed to thinking horizontally, which is what you've done over multiple years in the past. And it can be something as simple as a microcontroller for a very specific application in the Indian market. It could be a motor controller application dedicated for simple tools, or it could be much more complex microcontroller that's doing a robotic arm or something of that sort. So the entire landscape is changing. The environment is very clear and the opportunities for growth are enormous. When we look back at this as renaissance, what we look at for companies that are coming into the environment is first, are they in one of those 4 major areas that we're in? And if you're not in one of those 4 areas, the other area, obviously, there's a lot of innovation occurring, which we will not talk about today, is healthcare. There is a major vertical in healthcare, especially when it comes to consumer-based medical device technologies, that is revolutionizing the landscape. Whether it's diabetic patients, and some of you may have seen some of things, and India is one of the largest diabetic populations in the world. Unfortunately, it's not a badge of honor, but it's something that new technologies are coming in to reshape the landscape. So multiple areas, think about solving problems. If you can solve a problem that exists today, and electronics can help you get to that endpoint, then certainly companies like Renaissance or other companies will be out there to seed, nurture you, and get you to the next step. That's exactly what we did with Steridian. We invested in them early on. We helped them tape out their 28 nanometer device. When we saw the traction that they were getting in the landscape, we decided to acquire them for our automotive business. We do similar things with other companies across the landscape, and I think I would encourage each of you to take that next step to think about what are the problems that are unique for India. One of the big advantages is the cost point in India has to be low, so you can take products that are developed for the Indian market and be able to take it to a global environment, which is something very few companies have the capability of doing if they haven't addressed the India market. So I've taken up more than my allocated time. I apologize, but this is something I'm deeply passionate about. But I do want to turn it over to my colleague on the left to talk a little bit about our company and the exciting stuff that's going on there.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much for this opportunity. So Third Eye Tech was one of those classical programs that got started off by the Prime Minister's vision. We were front seat beneficiaries to the entire process of Make in India, of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And we, all 3 of us, founders of this company, came back from outside after we finished our education. Vinayak from Oxford, me from Canada, and Mukul from IISc. We came back here and we were trying to figure out where we land. And comes along Prime Minister Modi with this beautiful vision for Atmanirbhar India, doubling down with the Semiconductor India mission, and it was no turning back from there. So our company designs image sensor products. We've had the privilege of working exclusively with the government, of being incubated by the government of India, starting with the armed forces and now with the semiconductor mission moving into the automotive sector. This is our scale-up time, so I think the DLI scheme comes at an amazing time for us. And we're really looking forward to all of the opportunities that are opening up, not just from the funding perspective, but also from partnerships and everything that we just heard coming from industry over here. To everybody in this audience, I think there's a healthy amount of delusion, as MOS said, to get into this field. But this is the best time to do it. We started off being incubated at IIT Delhi, like many people here would love to be incubated, as I'm sure, at IISc or at other institutions, the academic institutions. Even now, 40% of our team does a PhD or a master's on the side while working for us full time. And we think that it's that feedback loop that allows that innovation to be a catalyst for our growth. I don't think there's a more exciting time than now to be in India, to have access to this massive market where our government is creating opportunities for companies like us to thrive, where the foreign players are looking at us as equals for the first time because of the policies of this government, where we are becoming important to how large corporations navigate the Indian ecosystem. And a small example was I was at the Aero India show in Bangalore here last week, and I went back with the feedback to the armed forces that never before have the foreign OEMs laid out the red carpet for Indian companies as they have right now. And I think that's a matter of great national pride, and I hope that's inspiring. And I'm here to talk about any of these opportunities at any given point. With that, over to Michael.
Shailesh so beautifully talked about finding that problem statement, right? Can you tell a little more about, did you go solve a global problem, optimize it for local, or how do you prove it out, right? The concept is there, the technology is there. How do you prove out that, your approach to the problem solving part?
So I think that for every problem, you need to find one marquee customer that's willing to support that. And the question is, does that marquee customer have either the volumes or the budget to justify that problem being solved? And then to scale up from there. So while Mukul comes more from a technology background, Vinayak and I come from more a business background. So the question was from day one, what is the product market fit and how are we going to get there? Before we started investing in resources to even do the first design, we had a very clear vision of the markets that we could get into, and we started conversations with customers across those markets. So for example, we're now starting to expand our portfolio into the automobile industry, but we had these conversations with the major companies starting 4 years ago. And I think that approach to not getting married to technology, but making sure that there is a market that is going to buy your product is very important at the inception phase itself.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, thank you everybody for the nice introduction, for the opportunities I think the government is creating for us, and the crowd. Thanks a lot once again. I can tell you a little bit about my experience, how we started and how we went ahead, what are the opportunities and the difficulties we faced and how we overcome it. Semi was started in 2017, almost we are 5 years old company now. So the first problem I had to solve is that, the mental setup. I am coming out from a semiconductor company where, I worked for 30 years, lot of experience. To come out of that cozy environment and to go for a startup is first hurdle, I faced. So that was, I had a passion. So with passion, I came out of, that hurdle. The second thing was solving the capital intensive problem, because the problem of the semiconductor is a capital intensive market, wherein you require a lot of capital to go ahead and solve it. So we went ahead with the solution of generating IPs first, the value-added IPs, and with that value-added IPs, we go to the next step of creating products for the market. So we are already crossed that that first hurdle. We created IPs, we created customers using these kind of IPs, and then we are on a path of creating now the products towards it. Now to choose what kind of IPs we should do. So we decided to choose on the very high speed kind of converters, very high precision kind of converters. So these are the markets we identified, and we thought that these are the markets that could be useful. We created some of the best IPs in the world. We created patents. We have a few Indian patents. We have a few US patents. In fact, we have government support for the scheme of government we use for applying for the patents in US. US patent is expensive. So we are an example, one of the first example to use these kind of facilities from the government. These IPs we created, the IPs are used for various applications. 5G is one of them. So we have already a customer on 5G kind of applications. We have customers already on MCU kind of applications, on industrial and also for consumer kind of application. So we created those wealth of IPs which are useful in the industry, which are sellable and which are differentiated. So I think the main point was differentiation. So know the market and then do the differentiation. So we try to differentiate our nearest competition by 2 to 3x. And in fact, in the high-speed domain, there are probably 2 companies worldwide. One is sitting in US, I know. One we are here for the 5G domain. So we have already created that kind of market for us. Going ahead, customers, how we handle the customers. So that is another area where we had to focus, and we had to get the customers early on. So getting an early on customer is not an easy task, because customer always need silicon. They say, okay, show me silicon, I'll give you order, else I'll not give you the order. So we went very fast, to creating silicon. within, you know, first few months of operation. So within 6 months of operation, we had the silicon, we went ahead, you know, to the various customers, various MNCs, various startups, and we got the customers all in the domain of 5G, in the domain of MCU business and so on. We went for the fab partnership. We started using 4 fabs, major fabs. We used Samsung, TSMC, UMC, and SMIC. So these are the 4 major fabs in the world. We are having IPs on all over these fabs. Samsung went ahead. They offered us IP partnership. So that's one of the good milestones we achieved. We are IP partner with Samsung, so we get very special access to their fab. We get a special access to their corner lots. We get special access for, you know, for everything. And UMC is another IP partner, partnership offered to us. So we are IP partner with UMC fab as well. So we crossed this hurdle, fab hurdle as well. Then comes, in fact, this comes much before, is the talent, right? So the talent, we created an opportunity within our company for the people to learn. So our company is famous for learning aptitude. So people are, you know, very excited when they come to our company. They learn, they experiment, they see the patents. You know, they see their senior producing patents and so on. So these kind of things have created a kind of environment in our company, which is learning environment. Now we are, you know, ready to fly to the next step. Thank you.
Rakesh, I'm sure Shailesh, one follow-up question, right? Very often I've seen many of these fabulous IP companies struggle in that silicon process and morph into a services design support. It's not a bad thing, yes, but that you have resisted that transition, looks like. So is it largely partnership that helped you, or is that still a part of your overall, just so give some color there?
In fact, this was our underlying principle, that we are going to produce only IPs. So we got many offers in between to do some kind of services. We always said no, and we always chose this difficult path, you know, to create the IPs, because we know we are going to do it.
This is very inspiring. Very nice.
Now, one more question, if I may. I mean, as you look to your next phase of growth, right, what do you see occurring that will take you to the next level? And do you still encounter challenges in terms of getting customers to say, hey, you're a startup, I don't want to deal with you? How do you deal with that particular challenge, which is something every startup deals with at some stage of their growth?
Yes. So in fact, we have created strategic partnership with some customers. Some of the customers are MCU customers, some of the customers are 5G customers. Those customers, we have already created those kind of partnership. So going to the next step, there are ICs to be created, dies to be created. So those customers are going ahead with us, and they say, okay, you give us some solutions in this domain, which is, you know, for example, one of the domain is like MCU application specific kind of applications, which is analog intensive. So we are analog experts. They are digital experts. So they say, we are very good partner. Okay. So we are crossing that kind of hurdles, but I think the next hurdle is going to come regarding when we mature for production. Yeah. So the production, that time we will need some kind of investment. In fact, not some, lot of investment we will need to go ahead. So I think customer part, we are solving it through strategic customer, and this we have solved a lot, and we are having some more strategic customer insight as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So the gentleman to your left, I know Tushar's been speaking with you folks as well. Yeah. So if you want to provide a little bit of color and what your experience is.
Thanks a lot. I heard Brinda and then Rakesh, very inspiring story. I'll talk a little bit about Fermionic. So before starting Fermionic, right, myself and then my other co-founders, we had this simple vision, what it would take to make a chip design company out of India. And with that simple vision we started. I come from the same background, we have this immense experience building chips. But the thing is that really we want to see Indian semiconductor company selling chips, not only for local, even for the global, say like applications. Thing is that like we started in 2020, we are building chips for wireline communication chips, and we also have focus on the communication side, which is now growing in the automotive, in the sense that like automotive is going to be next data center on the wheels. So we do have some chips planned for that. So I'll talk a little about my journey at Fermionic and then overall Fermionic's journey. So don't want to reiterate again that like chip design is, say like it's very tough task, it needs a lot of capital, everything. All those problems, say like everyone knows. What I would like to talk more here is that when we started we started in May 2020, that was in the peak of the Corona time. It was a very brave decision to do. And then this kind of thing, even in the bootstrap mode, I tell that like we have done tape outs in 28 nanometer. We have done tape outs in some of the leading edge SIGI processes. So thing is that like I know that like there are a lot of folks who have a lot of apprehension about setting up your own company, building chips out of India. You can take Fermionic as one shining example and see, say like, take some, say like, some of the success stories what we could do, in the sense that like even in the bootstrap mode, the thing is that if you play rightly, if you can develop a good partnership between all the end-to-end development of the chip design, like right from the EDA, fab, and then the other challenge really we faced when we were trying to build our chips, really with the assembly. And then that was the time about a year back when all the entire global supply chain was in a, say like mess. Yeah, so thing is that like, I know that chip design is tough, but you have to do, someone has to do it. India is such a market, right, such a large market. If you see that from now to 10 years, we are going to be about consuming about $110 billion worth of chips in India. But how much we are producing? So there are always opportunities, and the thing is that if you can serve this opportunity sitting in India, not only the opportunities in India, but outside also, this is just immense. There are multiple drivers. The thing is that, so what my point is that at Fermionic, we have taken those bold steps. We have built chips for communication, and we are also planning to extend our portfolio in RFICs. We want to go beyond CMOS. We have built something in SIGI. We want to take it to compound semiconductors also. And overall, this program, right, it talks about the wholesome semiconductor. It's not about CMOS, it's not about FinFET, it's not about EDA, it's about semiconductor. And there I'm more bullish in the sense that like there are challenges which will be faced or which are faced by startups. You need early support, and this program is tailored for that one. I'm hopeful and optimistic that like when we, as a part of this program, right, some of the challenges what we have faced, we'll be able to mitigate it. And I can tell you one thing, designing is still the easiest job because all people sitting in this room, they are experts. The major problem is going to come, how are you going to validate this design into system? And I expect a lot of support from you gentlemen when we come to that level, or say like when any company is at that level. So in the sense that like, again, semiconductor is more like, it's a collaborative industry. Say like you have fabs designing, say like giving you a platform, then you have chip design companies. What I would like to see in India is that now there is a mushrooming, say like nice budding startups are coming. There are global giants sitting here. If you guys can maybe I think probably some kind of co-development model. So again, what my point is that like the chips are becoming more and more complex. You have the MCMs, and essentially the one say like maybe business model which is not explored a lot is that known good die model in terms of for the MCM applications, and there are companies who can do it. Even say like some of the chips what we have done, it can fit in that bucket. So probably say like a push from the large MNCs, the existing player, say like if we get it, probably say like whatever the consumption of chip is there, right, it's going to be produced here.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think right part of the DLI scheme that the minister alluded to that's actually very nice and that we're thinking about is you need to create more of a vertical ecosystem. Okay, at the end of the day, you cannot look at chips as just being a design element, a validation element. You have to look at the complete system solution that is basically being provided. And so what I'd again encourage companies such as yourself that are actually tackling fairly complex technological issues, okay? It's not trivial, whether it's, low light imaging or whether it's the kind of problems that you're working on the data converter side, right? It is, or beamforming side. These are fairly complex problems that even, companies that are well-funded on the West Coast of the United States would have a hard time working on. So it speaks a lot to the depth of the talent that you have. So I would encourage the companies such as yourself to partner with those of us who are interested in working with the Indian diaspora, right, to come and approach us. I mean, we have people in the organization, obviously here, such as Anand on the Micron side and myself and Tushar here on the Indian side, to partner. So at the end of the day, you will have the ability to create a vertical stack, right? Great example, again, that I'll bring it back down to earth, is what we're doing with Sankhya Labs, right? Sankhya Labs and us, as a part of the DLI scheme, and this is a plug, by the way, for the minister to approve one of these, which is really to co-develop a product that we're doing with Sankhya Labs. And then the partner that is going to bring it into fruition is Tejas Networks. And the platform support is going to be provided by TCS. So now you have the full vertical stack that is being developed, right? So that's the kind of partnerships you should think about, especially if you're developing one element of the complete signal chain. So think about the signal chain as a whole, and then think, who do I work with relative to what has to go on there?
So I can, I'll just chime in here. So the thing is that like this entire stack development, right? That's it's a very critical piece in serving to your customer. And one of the challenge I feel most of the startups here they face is that forward and backward linkage. So what essentially I mean is that like at the system aggregation side, right? When you have a prototype, when you have samples, so you want to create an opportunity where it goes into the systems, get the feedback from that early on, so that like you serve the system, and then also at the same time you have this competitive edge to go to multiple places as such.
In fact, Gautam, thank you for the nudge. We have close to 500,000 square feet of lab space at Micron India. And at this moment, I'm willing to sit down with many of you and explore the option of using this lab infrastructure for prototyping, for reverse engineering, and for making sure you have a better and a higher success with go-to-market. So we'll look forward to working with all of you.
And certainly the TCS Joint Innovation Center that we've set up yesterday is really dedicated to those verticals that we spoke about. And I think that's a great opportunity for you to work with the teams there as well in terms of what we're doing.
So how are we doing on time?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the people in the audience may have a question, or we might be keeping them for lunch. So one or the other. So I'd encourage the audience to ask any questions that you may have. I think there's people back there that have questions. Could you?
Good morning to everyone. My name is Chandu. I'm an engineering student. I have a question for the ma'am about low lightning works. You work on the sensor. Ma'am, I want to know about that. It is a hardware based or a software based, ma'am?
It's a hardware based.
Okay.
The idea was, can be worked, so software does a lot of image processing, right? But when you're looking at applications where it's a life and death scenario, so either for military or even for automobiles, you need to have as much true data from the hardware as you possibly can. Now, typically, low-light imaging has remained a challenging technological area from the silicon perspective, and everything that is supposed to do night vision imaging becomes too expensive. So our interest was, can we extract the maximum juice out of the hardware in a commercial process so that it's scalable in terms of mass numbers. So it's a completely hardware innovation. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think there is a lot of talk about, and some of you mentioned that designing is one thing, but post-silicon is a challenge. So all the startups, I wanted to ask you, when you build silicon, how did the debug, the manufacturing, the yield and all of that, how does it work for companies like you?
Okay, so you're right. Silicon validation, first silicon producing and silicon validation, both are expensive stuff. So for getting these kind of partnership, as I told you earlier, with Samsung and with UMC, we could get very preferential silicon access. In fact, some of them, they give us free of cost, even the corner lots. But they evaluate you first. They see you, are you capable, of using it or not. So that part, some part is solved. Then through customers' IP selling, IP licensing, some money is generated which can be invested in the testing, in the silicon part of it. For testing it, you need a small lab. So we created a very small lab inside this. It's like a, 388 lab, very small lab, wherein we can we can do all kind of experiments with very low cost. We don't need very expensive instruments to buy and so on. So we solved that part through low cost equipment, creating your own softwares, creating your own boards and so on. Then testing happens at all the temperature range, -40 to 125. So those kind of test reports need to be generated before you go to the customer. So it's a kind of tricky situation. Your question is very tricky, but I hope you got the answer that it can be solved through various means.
One last question. Yeah.
So my answer, the long and short, is jugaad. I mean, that's one thing that we're famous for in this country, and I think we should be able to use that in this, right? Everything from, we know how to do it, it's entrenched in our DNA. We talked about small labs right now. One of the best ways I've known to get something validated is put it in the hand of a customer, tell them to break it, you will get your boundary conditions. So you've got to be willing to do unique things in the Indian context.
So my suggestion is that you must have to do it, and then you have to find a way to do. If you have your own resources, invest in your own lab. But I can tell you from my experience that some of the products on which we worked, it needed more than $1 million type of investment to buy those instruments. So there you have to be innovative in the sense that if you believe in your product, and if you have a beta customer, you can use their facility. That's the one thing. And that was the time when we started, but now I feel that there are a lot of other good platforms. Probably you can utilize some of the facilities at some companies where even through this program they are going to be put together. So things will be easier. but you have to do it. There is no escaping from that.
Thank you. Well, please go ahead. One last question.
Yeah.
Can the microphone?
Microphone. I'll make.
I have the microphone. Maybe.
This will definitely be the last question, and please directly come to the question, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Good morning. This is Captain Madhusudan from Valuation Consulting, and I'm the partner. See, we are an advisory and a funding company, and a lot of startups do come to us for funding, and nothing from semiconductors specifically we could see because of a lack of integration from industry versus where we stand. So I deliberately went ahead, met few people in US who are essentially Indians, Bangaloreans from semiconductor working at a very, very senior positions, and we encouraged them to do a startup. They came to Bangalore, did a startup officially as a inauguration of startup as a company, and they went back saying, we don't know what to do. So we are willing to fund. We don't know where is the gap. They say we are, high performance custom integration circuit company, and they can do anything to do with this. They say you give us a chip for a car, we'll make. Give us a chip for a satellite, we'll make. We know how to do it because they are from that companies in US. I don't want to name the company. So they're willing to quit. So I'm looking at bringing back the talent back to India, like an accelerator format, integrate them with the startup here and have an ecosystem by which we have some heads up. So my question is to the honorable speakers and the Minister Sahab also, how do we have a platform like we are clueless? Whom do I approach? MIT or incubation company or a startup or an industry, where do we start? Because it's so many layers. So we need to create some micro slicing and say this is how it takes, this is where you can fit in. If somehow we get an ecosystem created, I'll be very happy to, come forward and find and integrate with this.
Let me take a crack at it, if you don't mind. I think that's a good question, and there was a discussion I was having earlier with Satya as well. And one of the things that's probably useful is to create something similar to Y Combinator type of approach that you have in the US, where you invite startups within the Indian ecosystem and get VC funds such as yourself, as well as folks from Sandal Road, to basically come in and do a day of pitching where every startup gets a 20-minute slot, and then the VCs and stuff go back with an idea of who they want to fund. That will open your eyes to what is actually needed in terms of supporting the ecosystem. So I would strongly say that that would be the right approach. But in India itself, without even approaching the West Coast, right, I would suggest that if it's other companies such as yourself, that you work with the IISc team to actually have them come in with startups, have a day of pitch for the startups, essentially with companies like yourself, if you can find half a dozen of them, to listen and decide who you want to fund. And then you'll make the matches that you need to make, because then you'll be solving specific problems. Again, it's back to the specific problems that you're trying to address. Okay, hopefully that answers your question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, respected audience.
Excuse me.
I think you can take the question offline, if you don't mind. Thanks. Before we leave the panelists, I would request the Executive Director of SIDAC Noida, Mr. Vivek Khaneja, to give mementos to Mr. Shailesh and to Mr. Anand Ramurthy.
Yeah, I want to thank the speakers again, though. They did a great job on the startups. Please give them a round of applause. And the Minister again.
So I would like to say last word. Please go and have a look at the stalls. There are some made in India chips. You will be, more than happy to see them. I think all of us have it.
This was a very enlightening and very nice discussion that we had, panel discussion. Just to answer the query that we had from the last gentleman, that we have METI Startup Hub, which is supporting the startups and entrepreneurs. So we are welcoming all of you to go to the website of METI Startup Hub, look for the opportunities there, including the VCs that can support these startups through accelerators. And along with it, we are looking forward to also collaborating with VCs under the Design Linked Incentives scheme, FutureDesign. Thank you.
I would request the audience to kindly be seated because we now move on to the panel discussion on DIRWI, the Digital India March towards RISC-V processor and device leadership. After an interesting fireside chat, of course, the panel discussion on Digital India RISC-V program spearheaded by MeitY. DIR-5 program envisages development of indigenous microprocessor cores and development of applications in multiple domains built on the SoCs developed around this course. The panel discussion will be moderated by Professor Kamakoti, Director IIT Madras and Chief Architect of DIRWI program. Professor Kamakoti, are you there online? He's going to join us online. Yeah, Professor Kamakoti, can you hear us? No, your audio, I think you're muted the audio. Yeah, kindly.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, yes. Before I hand it over to you, I would like to call upon the other panelists and then you can take over. Straight away, I would like to call upon Mr. Balaji Bhakta, founder and CEO of Ventana Microsystems. Mr. Balaji. Yeah. Console, the echo. Yeah. Naveed Sherwani, sorry for the echo. There is some technical this one, so kindly adjust. Mr. Naveed Sherwani, Chairman and CEO of Rapid Silicon. Mr. Naveed Sherwani. Yeah, kindly come over, Mr. Naveed Sherwani, if you are there. I would also like to call upon Neil Gala, the co-founder and CTO of Encore Semiconductors, on the stage. Yeah, that was required. I think the echo will go if you clap. The younger lot seems to be a little restless, so please do not converse when the panel discussion is happening, particularly friends at the back. A lot of conversation because the hall is so acoustically good. Even a whisper is going to be heard on the stage. So request all of you to kindly maintain silence. After Neil Gala, T.R. Shashwat, founder of Mindgrove Technologies. Mr. Shashwat. Yeah. I would also like to call upon Mr. Deepak Shapeti, co-CEO of Morphing Machines. With the hope the names would join us in a bit. In the interest of time, I would request Professor Kamakoti, Director IIT Madras and Chief Architect of DIRWI program, to take us through this session. Over to you, Professor.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much. The Digital India RISC-V program has been conceived. The whole RISC-V effort in India started around 2013, and we progressed in a very systematic manner. Both CDAC and IIT Madras had started this program with an intention to develop a family of microprocessors, starting from embedded controllers to server-level multi-core systems. And in this journey, we had a couple of successful takeoffs, successful design wins, and those have basically enthused and given confidence to the government, thanks to Minister Rajiv, who have initiated this Digital India RISC-V as a project, and this DIR-5 has now taken a shape where we are in a position to come out with multiple designs. We are in a position to form an ecosystem centered around RISC-V make our designs targeted towards this fight and see that how we can make certain very effective domain-specific architectures for our own needs and also global needs. So this is the overall very quick summary of our DRIFI initiative. We have an exciting panel in front of us. First I invite Balaji, who's a Chennai boy to Silicon Valley. Balaji, let us start with, you have done a lot of designs, specifically with ARM, right? Now, that RISC-V has come in, and your company, as we see, is investing a lot more on the RISC-V. Now, we would like to understand ARM versus RISC-V. What is the advantage that RISC-V is going to have over the conventional contemporary architectures? I think that will set stage for this whole conversation. Over to Balaji.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. Thank you, Professor. I also wanted to thank the Honorable Minister, Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, for joining RISC-V International. And by doing so, putting India's RISC-V intentions resolutely known throughout the world. So I'm also a member of the Board of Directors at RISC-V International. And so, first of all, thank you. And that pretty much says to the whole world, India is taking RISC-V very seriously. So, speaking of myself, I've been in the lab for about 32 years now. I've done 4 startups, all had spectacular exits. I've been at 4 public companies with large P&L roles, etc. The most recent one was at Marvell, and I was doing, running a BU that was doing a lot of the COM, networking, compute, and storage type silicon. And if you look at Marvell, it's probably one of the most successful semiconductor companies in the Valley, and I was a VP GM there. So as we were doing a lot of the products, we wanted to build processors with our own unique capabilities. And that's why we chose to do something with ARM. The CEO of ARM, Warren East, and I spoke and I said, hey, I'd like to get an architectural license to do something unique, but take ARM to the data center space. I mean, ARM had been all along in the embedded space. Back in the day, you had PowerPC and MIPS, and those 2 architectures were kind of getting pushed out. ARM really was establishing ubiquity and wanted to leverage that because the software ecosystem and the entire developer base was getting pretty strong. And so we went out there and created this company called Veloce. Veloce was the world's first 64-bit ARM processor company. And we incidentally built the entire architectural validation suite for ARM in 2008 in Bangalore. And bulk of the work was actually done out of India. And we taped out the first 64-bit ARM processor from Bangalore as well. So if you look at it, we did all of that work, and we were the first ones to make 64-bit ARM happen in the world. And we demonstrated this in 2012. On the heels of that, the company was acquired by another public company. But as we kind of started progressing through the journey, it became very clear to us that ARM was also very restricted. We went into ARM because we wanted to create an alternative to a well-entrenched incumbent, that is Intel. But the second option also became somewhat of a monopoly, so it became a duopoly. So about 2012 timeframe when we launched this product, I used to have Dr. Paul Gray, who was the provost and dean of Cal Berkeley on the board of directors. He introduced to us a skunkwork project that was going on at Berkeley, and it came to be RISC-V. This was in 2011, 2012 timeframe. Krista and his grad students were working on something. It had the potential to create an alternative to both those ISOs, Intel x86 as well as ARM. So our push towards that was motivated by this openness. If you can create this open hardware architecture that allows the entire developer base to innovate. So basically maintain the compatibility by adhering to the base ISA 100%. But on top of that, if you can innovate and create your own enhancements, which is what you're referring to as DSA, domain-specific acceleration of capabilities, all of a sudden it becomes something unique, and it'll also bring in huge benefits in terms of driving workloads to a greater degree, unlike the other alternatives. So that was the main reason. If you look at what that all means, if you want to build something on today, you're going to be spending approximately about $100 million before you have an SoC app. With RISC-V, you can pretty much get that done for about $10 million. That was the main reason. If you can go to an open hardware platform and then work with open ecosystem, you're able to build a highly differentiated product that can compete with the alternatives successfully. That was the reason to go after RISC-V. And that was also the reason to start my town.
Thank you. I think that's a good starting point. That one was that this openness is actually trying to bring in reduced cost at the same time without degradation in performance. Thank you, Balaji, for bringing out this point. Now we go to Naveed. Naveed, we look at you in two ways. One is as a guru and also as a CEO. My first question to you would be as a guru. We have been, you wrote the first book on physical design automation, which many of us read as a student and also taught as a professor. Naveed, how to see one of the greatest success of x86 has been because of very broad-based education of x86 platform to the nook and corner of the world. Now, if RISC-V has to be successful, undoubtedly we need to have a very broad education and introduction of awareness of RISC-V. We'd like to learn from you as a guru. How do we go about this, and what are the efforts currently being taken, and what should be taken? Naveed.
Professor Kamakuti, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I think one of the first very bright person that I met in India was you. And I think we worked on the project going back somewhere in 1994, 95, something like that. So great pleasure always working with folks like you. Energy that you bring to the whole ecosystem is the first ingredient in you. So I think I came into the RISC-V system somewhere in 2015, 2014, and I became CEO of a company called Sci-Fi, which was founded by the original founders. Then we went on to create 5 other companies in China, in Korea, and other places, RISC-V companies. So I thought the point of view is very simple, that I think in order to make RISC-V global, first we had to move RISC-V out of US to Geneva. So that's why we created RISC-V Italy.
There. We have to get our very young people excited about this life. And I think they can get excited by giving them some FPGA boards, some things to play with, doing that education at that level. And it has to be very wide. We cannot be in the mentality that, oh, there is a great institution, Berkeley, MIT, IIT. No. I think we have to think about every Indian student who is interested in hardware should have a chance to work on RISC-V. Every Indian university student should have a chance who is interested in hardware, have a chance. So My thought process is a very broad education program that is relentless, meaning every week we are doing something. That kind of a broad-based program is needed. Secondly, I think we have to invest in a tape-out program, a program where every university student, we have system now in less than $5,000, a group of 5 students, 10 students can tape out a very decent RISC-V based system so that a graduating student, let's say with masters or even bachelors, can not have to go and give an interview. They can just show his chip. Say, I have a chip. This is a chip I taped out. Let me tell you about my chip. This doesn't happen anywhere in the world. India can be that country. It is possible today that we could do, and a program that we would like to launch in India, we call it Tape Out India program. That basically means that every student, hardware student, can form a group, project group of 5, 10 students and actually physically tape out a chip. So that's a second thing that we can do. I think there is a third thing that we can do. I think that is going to be very important, is that the students should start working on real projects. And I think it's possible with RISC-V. And I think through eFabless and there are other programs where actually you don't make chips for university projects that go nowhere, but try to solve some real problems. It's possible. It's a very low cost thing. For $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, you can actually tape out a chip, solve a small problem, doing something, a small robot, something else. But this could be real, actual physical problems that people can solve. I think a very broad-based program that is directly related to physical, something people doing by hand, is the magic that we need to do. High-level university, just seminars and professors talking about is not going to get somewhere we need to go. I have said one thing. It is not that India needs RISC-V. It is RISC-V that needs India. Without the innovation in India, without the broad population of India, the thousands of universities of India, RISC-V is not going to go anywhere. And the reason is very simple. It is sheer headcount at the end. How many people are working on RISC-V? So I really look towards India to be the leader in RISC-V. And I can see a day, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when we talk about RISC-V, we will be talking about hundreds of chips, thousands of chips that have been taped out in India. And students in hundreds of universities are very familiar with it. This is something that they naturally talk about. This is the chips are being taped out every day and every week. And I think that is the day that I dream about, and that is the day I live for. So I hope that happens, because it has to happen if RISC-V has to go somewhere.
Thank you. Thanks. Very, very inspirational, taking RISC-V to high schools. And of course, you are given us a tip, Tape Out India program, and moving from resume to chips. So people, instead of a resume, can show a chip. These are very great ideas. As such, every 5 minutes of conversation with you, Naveed, really gives us a lot more. And I should also tell that last year we had a grand challenge, RISC-V based challenge, which was called the Swadeshi Microprocessor Challenge, which was launched by the MIT and under the guidance of Honorable Minister Rajiv. We had close to 10,000 applications, and from there we shortlisted around 100 semi-finalists and 30 finalists. And as you really told, very, very interesting real projects came up. And certainly we will continue this for the years to come. And of course, a relentless, the word, I take this adjective very seriously, a relentless broad education program is something we will look at. Thank you very much, Naveed, for this very inspiring, and also give us the confidence that RISC-V needs India. I think we will take that in a very great spirit and move forward. Now I go to Dr. Neil Gala. Of course, Neil, one of the first question I would like to ask is that you would have had multiple offers. You have been a PhD student at IIT, and you would have had multiple offers, alluring offers from processor design companies. And but you still wanted to have a startup in core and specifically concentrating on core companies. Now, what made you do that? So your message, I hope, will be an inspiration for the young students who are in the auditorium. Neil.
Thank you for the question, sir. Every time me and Prof are on the panel and he's asking questions, it reminds me of my thesis days, right? So it's pretty much the same thing. He asks questions and we have to answer. But again, I would like to thank Mighty, Honorable Minister, for setting up the Roadshow, constantly reminding us, to constantly innovate, to add more to the ecosystem, to make sure that this particular industry, our community, is at a global scale, extremely competitive, and talent is definitely there. Coming back to the Prof's question, so I was doing my PhD, and in 2012, the motivation was computer architecture, right? I was somehow sort of very fascinated by the idea of processors, pipelines. Prof was always insisting that we should stop using simulators. Simulators are for the weak-minded. They let you get away with a lot of things. Margins of 30% error is fine. You can still publish in A1 conferences. But physical design, an actual chip, that's where the fun is, because it either works or it doesn't. There's no 50% working chip or an 80% working chip. Great. So we reached out to the ARMs and the Intels of the world, and we got nothing back. You either have to pay beyond the budget that we've allocated for Semicon at that point, just to get architectural licenses or even initial licenses. So the idea was, I want to make sure that the next Neil that walks in does not have to face the same problem. And Shakti was born. We came up with the idea of building open source processors, and soon enough we landed upon RISC-V, which had a similar idea of open source architecture. So it was a marriage made in heaven. And it sort of took off. People sort of realized, openness in this particular industry, in this particular vertical of process design, is absolutely necessary. The monopoly that existed was no longer being accepted by the companies or the community anymore, right? That sort of gave me the boost that, forget about building x86 in India, forget about building ARM in India. I have a chance to actually make something, to make the leapfrog jump into the next generation of IPs, the next generation of processors, and actually do that from scratch in India, right? And that was something that was really motivating to me. As Prof mentioned, yes, there have been multiple offers on the table. A lot of MNCs were approached. I'll give you a small example. At least this was what was motivating to me. Was one of the interviews that I was giving. It was they took me to the food court and they said, oh, we're not formal, we don't want PPTs, we just want to chat with you. A couple of guys sat down, we had conversations, and then there was this lunch break that happened, right? And then the entire food court was flooded, and this was a research lab, so there were literally hundreds, if not 200 different PhDs who've done PhDs from IITs, MITs, Berkeley's, all sitting there. At that point, I was just another fish in the pond, right? And for me, doing something for India, doing something independently, doing something new from scratch, and being at the edge of it. I'm not catching a moving train today with RISC-V. RISC-V has a much longer way to go. It's stable today for you to adopt. And back then it was something that we were very hands-on. We were contributors. We were the foundation members of RISC-V. So we knew everything, and we had that edge at that point. And I think that was the biggest motivating factor for me to stay on RISC-V, to build Encore. Basically, the Encore at that point set out to revolutionize, or powering India's semiconductor revolution with indigenous processors, right? We no longer have to look at the ARMs and Intels or the West Coast or the East part of the world, especially with the fabs coming in India. We have the ability to build our own chips end to end, from design to silicon, owning everything, knowing everything, and delivering world-class products. So that's the aim of Encore. That's what I've set out to be. And I'm here to engage with anyone and everyone who is willing to embark with me on that journey in making India a semiconductor nation. Thank you.
Multiple of them. highly domain specific. Very successful startup. Now, what is the market projection that you have? So what encouraged you to take this path, and what is the market projection that you have as a young startup? Shashwat.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to METI and to the Minister, because not only for the opportunity here, but because it is all of your encouragement which has given me the confidence that we can do what we are doing right now. So Mangrove's idea was always to build products, and to build products which we currently, the Minister's presentation, he was and what we see is not only is there a question of holding that IP within India, and that is a $1 trillion market globally, which means it is at least 80% of the market. It's a question of building that IP within Indian context, build it for an Indian ecosystem, and see how we can build something which is right for the customers that we have. So the market is vast. It's a little nascent, but it's a vast market. It is already a market which has a lot of vibrancy, and because of the IT focus that we have had over the last so many years, the Indian market is also capable of handling the kind of SOCs that we will be putting into. We have a large portion of the ecosystem already in place, and very good interest.
Has been hardware, software.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Kama, for your question. So to start off with, I think the time for the Digital India RISC-V initiative is the perfect time. Probably because before we jump into domain-specific accelerators, I wanted to touch upon the modular and the extensible nature of the RISC-V instruction set, which not just allows us to cater or create DSAs for different configurations or different use cases, it allows us to do it on demand. For example, you asked me about AI. Now, let's look at the RISC-V instruction set today, which we can pick on demand based on what area we are targeting. So, for example, we built out a RV32 IMAV because we wanted a vector unit for doing AI/ML applications. Based on that, we actually had a starting point. Now, we talk about AI/ML, not just at the edge, but even at the data centers, at the core or at the cloud level. And this gave us a very unique problem to solve at Morphing Machines. We needed to decide how do we come up with a fabric which not just allows us to work efficiently at the edge, but also at much more greater amount of complex workloads and training workloads. Now, this is where the extensibility of the RISC-V instruction set came in really handy. And that's when we introduced certain reconfigurables and a certain dynamic runtime reconfiguration instructions into the RISC-V instruction set. And this allowed us not just to be able to handle edge computing workloads very well in a reconfigurable data flow architecture paradigm, but also take on much more concrete and much more bigger workloads at the cloud and the data center levels. So, Kama, does that answer your question?
This domain-specific architecture, in your opinion, is it a hype or a reality? And if it's a reality, then what is India's chances in this?
Yeah, Professor Kampudi, I think we have just about 5 minutes for the conclusion of the session. Yeah. Okay. Am I audible? Professor, 5 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. First of all, yeah, thank you, Kama. So DSA is uniquely what is required for you to drive workload efficiencies today. If you look at it, you can go from, say, 7 nanometer to 5 nanometer. You're spending about $10 billion approximately to get a particular fab going. And the efficiencies that you used to get, transistors used to double in performance every 18 months. That used to be the Moore's law, reliably coming to play every 18 months. It's been going on for decades, but that just stopped happening about 7 or 8 years ago. So once the Moore's law is flattened out, the only way you can get workload performance is exactly what the other gentleman was talking about, domain-specific acceleration. What do we mean by domain-specific acceleration? If you take a look at any use case, for instance, if you look at any data center, you have about 7-tier architecture. At the back end, you'll have a database server, storage server, load balancer, a caching appliance, and web service. These tiers of servers, they all tend to repeat a certain fundamental infrastructure-related protocols over and over and over. Yes. If you use a regular CPU, it's inefficient. If you can accelerate those things using some of those specialized instructions that are uniquely possible with RISC-V, you're able to get about 3 to 4 times the performance increase. So $10 billion in a new fab to get 8%, or doing DSA, you get 300 to 400% performance gain. So that's the difference. So DSA is the future. And if you look at India's strength, it's software, systems, and that directly translates to core design capabilities. So if you look at hardware, software, core design, DSA is the fundamental platform around which you can achieve that. So DSA is real. RISC-V is the right platform to do it. And India is the destination to be able to make it happen. So DSA is equal to India thanks to RISC-V.
Thank you very much, Balaji. Now we go to Naveed. We have a question which I don't think I can close this session without asking you that question. One of the things that, as all these 3 startup companies are there, and of course Morphing Machine is quite a mature startup, we have an issue with respect to IPs, and many of these IPs are tied to the foundries, right? Because if you are looking at a 5 or say a USB, we are tied to a foundry. Now, how to make reasonable SOCs, which have reasonable good functionality, wherein this IP issue need to be solved, and also that we get quick silicon. Of course, in open silicon, I have seen under your leadership, a silicon per week was actually a reality even 15 years before, right? So, Navid, what is your advice to these startups? How do we get these IPs and very good silicon SOCs plus the silicon at a fast pace? What's the advice that you want to give to the startups? Navid, you're muted.
IP problem, I think, cannot be solved by a startup. IP problem has to be solved by a nation. I think just like we have decided to solve the fab problem as a nation, right? So fab is useless without design, right? Design is useless without IP,
okay.
Right? So I think we have to think like that. And this is a struggle actually all over the world. When I was at Intel, people are willing to put, $1 billion at that time. $1 billion was a big number 30 years ago for a fab, but not willing to put down $1 million for a piece of IP. At that time, Merlin core from LSI Logic used to be $1 million. I remember that. My point is, the importance of fab is equal to importance of IP. It should be funded just like we are willing to fund a fab. Only then we can fill the fab with Indian-based designs. So I think we should think of IP as a national project. We should have a fund which should initially have license agreements with international IP companies, Synopsys, Cadence, Alpha Waves of the world and things like that, and make those IPs available through a national program to the startups in India. I don't think a single startup can solve the problem by itself. A typical SOC these days, and I have few of them, need to spend around $9 million for IPs just alone, right? I mean, you have this core, that core, SerDes, so on and so forth. So I think that you cannot do anything. And plus, with the funding situation that we have in India, there's no chance, likelihood that we'll be raising that kind of funding for each individual. I would like to encourage Honorable Minister and the entire thinking that we are putting into fab. We have to put the same thinking into EDA tools and same thinking into IPs. It has to be a national project. It has to be funded at the national level, almost the same as you fund fabs. Because as I said earlier, fab by itself will do nothing unless you have designs, and designs will do nothing without EDA tools, and EDA tools will nothing if you don't have IPs. So I have to answer the question that we have to think IPs, EDA tools and design as a national project, and all the enabling things that you need for design has to be a national project.
Thank you, Naveed. So to all the three startups, half minute, what is your big challenge, the next big challenge that you will be facing? Neil, Shashwat, Deepak, in that sequence. Neil.
I think the next challenge for a startup, for a fabless startup in India is always proving silicon, right? Like the previous panel said. So to get silicon out, to prove that the processes work, to show that our IPs work, and we don't want to do everything ourselves. We want to make sure that we partner with ecosystem members who can help complement us in skills, whether it's physical design, it's bring ups and all those things. We want to make sure that we focus on what we are strong at and make sure that at C-Silicon, I think that's the biggest hurdle we'll be doing this year.
Tool set required to give it to a customer to get a customer to use it. Or to give it to when Naveed was saying, giving it to a school student requires something at the level of an Arduino which they can use. And building that environment is the next big challenge in my opinion. Deepak?
Yeah, he's speaking, sir. It's on, it's on. Go ahead.
So now with the Government of India schemes, specifically DLI, C2S, a lot of our challenges, right, from, fab, design, EDA tools perspective have been solved. But one of the key issues which remains is after you get your first design win, how do we create a sustainable customer pipeline? How do we create something which is in India, which is compelling enough to scale across the globe? For us, that would be the biggest challenge on how to capture not just the mind share, but even the dollar share of these major global multinationals for some of the solutions which we are creating, which are globally applicable. How do we get that credibility? What is exactly going to drive that? So that's one of the burning questions we have at Morphing Machines today. Thank you.
No, sir. We are seriously running out of time. Professor Kamkoti, your final comments before we close this session.
It's fine.
Sir.
I thank the ministry for Arduino and the Raspberry Pi, which are RISC-V based. The second thing is the TIP, which is the Tape Out India program, which will make the people close to reality, where there will be silicon proof, where a resume can be substituted by a chip. A very interesting idea. And of course, the most important IP problem, we should take it as a national project, the IP and the CAD tools. And I think that will be a most important step. And we will work together with the government and the academia and also all of you and try to see how to address these things in a very significant way. These are very good takeaways from this. I thank all of you for this and thank all the audience. I hope we have made your 1 hour very interesting and thought-provoking. We would like to see many of you young kids take up microprocessor design as your important subject, as your profession, and we like to see a lot of computer architects coming out. I think that's very important for the country. With these few words, thank you very much. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Professor Kamkoti, and all the esteemed panelists who have joined online. We have both these esteemed panelists physically. Before we leave, both of you, I would request the Executive Director of Bangalore CDAC, Dr. S.D. Sudarshan, to kindly come over and give mementos to both of them. Thank you very much. Thank you all the panelists for the insightful session on the Digital India RISC-V program, and thank you, Dr. Sudarshan. Now, one of the major factors for successful scale-up of any startup is funding availability and also mentorship. We have an interesting discussion which is going to follow now on how to attract investment in the semiconductor ecosystem from the VC industries. This session will be moderated by Shri Ruchir Dikshit, Country Manager, Siemens EDA. I would request Mr. Ruchir to kindly come over. Please put your hands together for Ruchir. In the interest of time, I'm going to call upon all the panelists very, very quickly. Shri Rama Bethamangalkar, Director, Qualcomm Ventures. Hearty welcome to you, sir. Mr. Ramamurthy Shivkumar, Partner, Pragya Ventures Shiva, is going to join us online. We also have Mr. Veera Lokesh I. Reddy, Western Digital Capital. Hearty welcome to you, Reddy Garu. Mr. Som Shubro Pal Chaudhary, a partner of Bharat Innovation Fund. And also we have Mr. Chinnu Sendil Kumar, Managing Partner of Xfinity VC. I would straight away hand over this session to Mr. Ruchit Dikshit to kindly take us through. It's over to you, sir.
All right, thank you so much. I'm seeing a bunch of people walking out. I think they believe that I am and we are holding you from lunch, but believe me, I'm not. The other thing that if you have stepped outside and you would have noticed some people who are dressed like me, they are the wait staff, they're going to get you food, not me. All I'm missing is the hat, and then I would have fit in right there. So, this is an interesting session because what we have been able to put together is a collection of people who help people with ideas bring their ideas to the market. Now, all day today, we've been talking about DLI, and we saw the Honorable Minister talk about statistics. If you remember, he was talking about Digitize India. That vision was set in 2015, and because of that, we are sitting here today. During that time, we have seen, and the Minister also presented the number of unicorns. So what we want to do today, talking to the panel here, is find out when we will be able to get a unicorn in semiconductor and electronics out of India. And what does it take? So before I get there, how many of you in the audience are students? Oh, awesome. How many of you think you have good ideas that you can build something around? Excellent. So these are the people. Remember their names and faces. But what we will do today is try and find from them what they're looking from you when they start looking at things. Do we have Shiva online? I don't see him. Ah, there he is. Hey, Shiva. So Shiva is joining us from Portland, and it is 11 p.m. your time. Right? If you can have him there, please. Thank you, because I know what I look like. Or it changes automatically. Only if I stop speaking, then that happens. Okay, all right. So introductions, we didn't go deep into introductions, but what we have today are two people who lead the capital arms of large MNCs on the dais. And then we have three people who run independent venture capital firms, and they're looking for good ideas to invest in, because believe me, while we all have the need to build a nation, but funds always fund where there is an opportunity to make money, right? So how many of you have heard of Qualcomm and Western Digital? Western Digital? All right, so let's start with Western Digital because I had fewer hands come up on Western Digital. So, Rama, what does the capital arm of, sorry, I got it mixed up. So Lokesh, Western Digital, what does a capital arm of an MNC, a semiconductor company, do, and how is it different in your opinion from a traditional VC?
Thank you for that question. Can you hear me?
Slightly closer.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Let me ask you before I start my answer, how many of you know SanDisk? Yeah, thank you for that. SanDisk is part of Western Digital, so now probably you would know Western Digital as well. Okay, coming to the question, let me put it in the domain of the semiconductor design answer itself. What corporate VCs or a strategic investor brings to the table over and above what a traditional investor brings in. I'll put three things. One, we bring in patient capital. What I mean by that, for a semiconductor design company, most of you would know that it takes up to 2 to 3 years before you get your first product out, before commercialization, and probably much more investment than a traditional aggregator company. So what we bring in is a capital that doesn't rush for returns, or there's no pressure for how much you made out of this. That's the first thing that a strategic investor brings in. The second thing that a strategic investor brings into the startups is shrinking the design cycle, which is very important for a semiconductor design company, right? Let me talk about Western Digital itself. We are integrated right from the wafer all the way to the product. So we have experience from the design to the manufacturing of the product, right? We also bring in, I mean, a traditional company, traditional VC versus a corporate VC, right? A large company like Western Digital also has a team which comprises of mathematicians, engineers, scientists, investors, lawyers, consultants, whoever can bring a company from growth stage, early stage, to a stage that it can commercialize and grow big. So you also get a team in addition to the funding that a traditional VC can bring in. As Western Digital is a powerhouse of innovation. You must have heard some people talking about the number of patents in the consumer internet companies. We are also on par. We probably have around 13,000 active patents as we speak today. That experience of fundamental research and applied research is something that we bring to the table again. We bring in connections from the customers who could help define your product to the assemblers and founders who could help you design the chip or whatever you're working on the product more efficiently and cost effectively. The suppliers who could bring the materials that are required for this. And the last one is not necessarily a corporate VC, because the previous session we talked about RISC-V. I'm just bringing that out as a large company. RISC-V is we are one of the earlier proponents of RISC-V. We were the platinum founding members of RISC-V. And the first company that announced 1 billion cores moving to RISC-V, which kind of pushed the entire ecosystem forward. So that's what we bring to the ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Lokesh. Chino, there was a term that was used, patient capital. So how does Xfinity respond to that? How is Xfinity same or different?
So it's interesting. One of our investor is in this days, so I'm not going to say who it is, but it's a corporate VC, so you can figure it out. So the corporate VCs, I think the Honorable Minister Rajiv was talking about, you had to look beyond the radar or look beyond the innovation. So they look at like next 5 to 10 years, how it is going to change the landscape. So VCs like us, we get funded by corporate VCs, institutional investors, and large family offices and so on. So how we are different, we have a clear timeline. We have a fund life of 7 years, 9 years, 10 years like that. So we have to take a company and make it work and prove the product market fit and scale it and return the money. So I'm sure how many of you watch movies very frequently? Have you seen movies like RRR? Yes, right? So have you seen how the movies actually are done? It is very similar in VC industry also, okay? So there is a capital, there is a timeline, you have to bring the right actors to the table, get the movie in time, and you have to establish the market fit, you have to scale, and basically return the money. So we work with a time cycle. The time cycle can vary 7 years, 9 years, 10 years like that.
All right. Thank you. Now coming to you, Shom. Yes. The name of your fund is Bharat Innovation Fund. So tell us more about it.
Sure. So if you look at what we do, we are more focused on investing in deep tech, core tech, IP-driven companies out of India for the global markets. Now, if you look at the last 25, 30 years of evolution of Indian startup ecosystem, we were what, in the 90s, we were kind of services first startups. Last 10, 15 years has been mostly consumption first startups. Now, I think this decade, with all the initiatives and so forth by the government, by the startup ecosystem and so forth, we believe this decade is going to be more innovation for startups. So that being said, what areas does deep tech, innovation, what does it imply? For us, we have distributed around 4 different big areas, right? So one big space is, of course, sitting at IISc, it's deep science. So we have taken bets in deep science, be it new kind of materials, be it new kind of biotechnology, cancer drugs, and so forth. The next big thing, which India has done extremely well, be it space tech, be it robotics, is hard tech, done affordably, easy in India, right? Because of sheer amount of talent we have. The third space we already know, this is India has an extremely rich culture of software development. So be it AI, ML, be it now even Web3 infrastructure, enterprise software companies, but which are not traditionally just technology enabled. A bit more pattern, deep tech, a technology moat and fort in the business. That's what we look for. And the last and final aspect, India has done wonders with India Stack, the UPI, Aadhaar, Digital Sky, ONDC ecosystem. So those are the kind of technologies startups are now building on or building similar large-scale digital platforms. So these are the type of investments we do, around 20 investments or so forth from this current fund, including companies in 5G networks, in cybersecurity, and so forth.
All right, thank you so much. Shiva, let me bring you into the conversation. Are you able to hear me? Can we get his volume up a bit? We could barely hear you, Shiva. So Shiva, your fund, you're based... We can't hear you yet. Say something, please, so we know. Oh.
I can hear you quite well.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay.
All right, so thank you. Yes, yes, it's a single duplex system here. So thank you for taking time late hour of your night to come and chat with us. Now you run Pragya Ventures out of Portland, and you've also been watching eagerly on the developments that are happening in India, especially around DLI. So instead of talking to you about and asking you about your fund specifically, in your opinion, what do you think our audience and people who are the constituents and stakeholders of the DLI scheme, how can they take advantage of it? What are some areas that you see are of most interest?
Well, I think to start off with, the fact that there is so much attention on this is the starting point. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of feedback. I'm not sure how my voice is coming through. Can you give me some sense of that? Because I'm just hearing myself.
You're good.
Okay. So I think the fact that there is a program and a lot of attention and focus from every level of government is enormously refreshing, and the momentum that we have seen in the last year and a half is quite unprecedented. And from my perspective, I first started investing in India. Started Intel Capital there in 1997. So that was a long time ago, before probably some of your audience was even born. And we built a pretty healthy portfolio in the beginning when corporate venture capital and venture capital in general was pretty unknown. Companies like Saskin and Future Software and Persistent Systems and so on happened during that time. And I think there was a period of time when India went very heavily investing in services companies because, like Chilu said, investors are there investing their primary constituency to the LPs that put money into a fund, and there's a timeline under which you operate. And the way the market was at that time, it was easier to make money investing in services. So I think where we are today, and I won't rehash everything else that the previous speakers have said, we are at a point where I think India is now cresting on the innovation wave. There is almost no doubt about it. What really surprised me, I made 2 visits to India last year. I was there for 2 months in the early half of the year and then 3 months in the second half of the year. So I was there for about 5 months. And there was a night and day difference between what I saw in the first half when DLI was just announced to what I saw toward the latter half when things are starting to get much more operational. And the one thing that you continue to hear a lot of still in India is that while we have all of this emerging support, there is not a lot of venture money or a lot of financial support coming into investing in hardware. That may or may not be true. I think there is parts of the ecosystem that gets a lot of attention, that is software, that is India's history, and also success, right? That is where all the attention comes from. Hardware is very hard. Let's make no bones about it. Hardware is very hard, and it takes time. And I think one of your speakers, I don't know if it was Chinu or the gentleman from Western Capital, said that it does take patient capital. Patient capital not just from the guys who are doing the investments, but the people who are funding the investors, the limited partners who are putting the money into the fund. And I think as we see this thing roll out, and I think I'm seeing the right amount of patience being exercised both by the ecosystem and by the government, which is very, very important, is that establishing this base of innovation is going to take a bit of time. I think some of the steps that have been taken in terms of making EDA tools available, making other forms of support available to entrepreneurs is important. But switching to the entrepreneur, I think the most important thing for them to take advantage of the DLI is not the engineering part. I think as Indians and perhaps our own DNA, we gravitate towards the solution, and building hardware or software is where we tend to focus on. I think we have to reverse what I heard one of the gentlemen say, where in the previous panel, he talked about how they built a product and then now their biggest challenge was looking for customers. I think fundamentally we have to flip that over. We have to start from the customer. You really have to understand where your customer is, who you're going to sell to first, and to the extent that you could actually lock in your lead customer or lead customers and identify how you're going to get that initial volume, the stronger you get in building your company. There's a lot more I can get into, but I'll stop there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shiva. We will get into that. Now I'm hearing an echo. Are you guys also getting an echo? All good now? Okay, all right. So Rama, I'm coming to you at the end, but what I want to start off with is, we heard from Lokesh, how is his corporate fund different? Is Qualcomm Ventures similar or different in the thesis and approach?
Well, I think every corporate has their DNA, and the venture activity is tuned to what the objectives are. Most of you here know about Qualcomm as a mobile company, modem company, and a mobile processor company. Of course, we are getting into many things. What you may not know is in the startup world for the last 23 years or so, we have had a very robust venture program where we invest in startups, and globally, this is across the world. And in India for the last over 10 years, about 12 years or so. And even in India, we have about 35 portfolio companies, over 2,000 crores of capital deployed. And where we are also different, now coming to your point, Ruchir, is we also have a hardware accelerator program within Qualcomm. And as we all agree, hardware engineering is hard. So we have set up something for very early stage startups, where until now about 89 companies have come through this program. Every year there is a very robust selection process, and then about 15 companies are selected. And what you get out of that is access to a very sophisticated testing lab, which we call Qualcomm Innovation Lab, where you have RF testing, you have interference testing, and all of that, which is very expensive to do outside. You certainly can cut that short. Reviews of your board, connections with ODMs, and of course access to experts in the company on the R&D side, whether it is on the design or even go-to-market, where some of the validation of whether there is a market need for a certain particular product or not. These are some things which we do in addition to our core activity of investing in startups.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Chinu, you talked about the way and your thesis and the way your fund works, right? There is a specific objective, there's a specific timeline. So if there is somebody here in the audience who believe that they have a very good idea, what should they do or what could they do to become an attractive investment candidate for you?
Sure. So I think, definitely I think one thing I say, I come from chip design world like all of you. Actually, I started my career in mixed signal and actually worked with Intel, in Siva and SanDisk, all these companies. But the transformation, what I have seen in myself, being in the venture capital for the 7-8 years, I think Siva was talking about it, earlier some of the speaker was talking about. I think, when you want to get investment from a VC world or anybody, you need to know your customer. The customer may change in your journey, but you need to know who is your customer, why would he be interested. That is very, very important. I think all of us technologists, we have spent a lot of time in technology. We are sort of married to technology. We love technology. I love technology, actually. Okay? I filed several patents and everything. But the commercial validation is very, very important. And the path you take it to go there. That's what I was telling about this movie story. The more and more I look at Kollywood or Tollywood, it's very fascinating. Actually, people talk about venture capital now. But actually, it was happening in India even 30, 40 years back, actually, in an informal way. Because if you take movie, you are not going to get bank loan. There is no collateral, nothing. But they have worked out, actually. So the point is, you need to know your customer. You need to know where your product is going to be sold and how much price it is going to be sold. And is it a push market, pull market? You have to understand. It's very, very important. The second thing we look at, if you want to get investment, the team. The team should have complementary skills. And usually we prefer like multi-founder team, one with technology, the other one with commercial understanding, other one with practical experience. And by the way, I like to proudly say that we have invested 35 companies, and out of that, 6 companies are founded by women, actually. We encourage women a lot. Many of the companies are founded by women, actually. So you have to have diversity in the team, actually. And we also look for capital efficiency because, there is a class of B2C investments and there is a B2B investments, actually. Our thesis when we started, actually, we set out ourselves, make in India for global markets. I'll give some statistics. The statistics will speak for itself. So we have invested in about 35 companies, deep tech and B2B SaaS and everything. So these companies put together, they have 30 plus Fortune 500 companies as customers. They have filed more than 350 patents, actually. So we invest quite a bit in deep tech. In the 35 companies, 6 or 7 are founded by PhD from Stanford, NUS, IIT Roorkee, different PhDs, actually. So we do encourage PhDs to come with very strong ideas. And we also have invested in dropouts. In fact, one of the company I invested is a roaring success. 3 dropouts from BITS Pilani came to me at the age of 22. I cut the first $1 million. In the last 7 years, I'll forward all the story and everything. They made the product and they got a 10 million ARR in India market. Then they expanded into US market. They are actually doing about 35 million ARR. I think people who are familiar with startup, they will understand. Classical example for make in India for global markets. You test it in India, take it to global markets, actually. And I think we do encourage all kinds of ideas, be it deep tech, B2B, SaaS, everything is okay. Off late, one of the theses we do look at thematic based, because EV is a big story. I think some of the students asked questions. We have 2 investments, one in battery, the other one in motors, because the EV story, what you have in US and Europe, is not going to be the right story for India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. So if you have some solution which is quite useful for India market, cost effective, we encourage that. So idea matters, team matters, your commercial acumen matters, actually.
All right, thank you so much. So you talked about make in India, make for the world. I have a belief, and this is my opinion before I go on to somebody else. And that opinion is that there is more than enough opportunity in India to solve problems of Bharat. Right? So far, we have been talking about the problems of India, but there is a much bigger Bharat that's out there. And the advantages that we have and the opportunity, the reason it creates it is because we have the largest young population in the world. And we will be the youngest for the next 50 years. Now, if we look at that, where is this young population? This young population is not in the metros. It's in tier 2, tier 3 towns, it's in villages. And they have experiences and the need for experiences that we have not provided yet. So I believe that while we should aspire to make for the world, but there is enough out there in India that we can do and do something good. So that takes me from Bharat to the Bharat Fund. Now, so we were chatting earlier, and you said something about a huge opportunity that we have not utilized, and it's about people of Indian origin who live somewhere else. So I thought it would be great to share your ideas with the audience.
Sure. I mean, see, couple of fundamental things. I mean, just like Chino, I also come from the semiconductor world. I was ex-managing director of analog devices, started my career designing chips at Cadence Design Systems, Design Services Group, and so forth. So if you look at how the ecosystem in India has evolved and so forth, we got extremely fantastic talent from an engineering, from an implementation standpoint, right? So hand over a spec of a chip, functional spec of a chip, you will get this design to perfection, meeting all the standards and so forth. One of the challenges, what unfortunately we don't have that much of a skill set, is defining the spec, the product management aspect. So essentially this means we talk about going over to customers early on, sitting down with the system OEMs, right? Discussing with them what are the challenges and so forth they are facing with their current generation of chipset. What kind of interfaces do they need? What kind of performance, cost, power numbers do they need? And then coming back to the design team, articulating, hey, this is the market I'm going to go after. This is how the market is going to be changing over the next 3 to 5 years. This is my target market. Why? These are the specs. So that kind of a product definition for the chip is a skill set we probably don't have in abundance out in India. And that's frankly, for the main reason most of the customers and so forth were out in the West. Most of our product marketing teams, product management teams created the specs, handed it over to us, and we designed the chips. Right. So that comes to a very interesting opportunity. See, this is for the first time with this DLI scheme, the PLI scheme. India is probably the only hotbed where the Indian government, enough amount of ecosystem development is happening on the semiconductor front. Believe me, nobody in the world, right, is investing that big in the semiconductor value chain. It's probably going to change except for China. Right? So this is an excellent opportunity, right, to essentially kind of reach out to a wider global audience to come build and make in India. That was my thought process.
Oh, thank you so much. Shiva, you will feel that I'm looking at you weird, but I'm looking at the monitor where I can see your face. And not looking at the camera. Now, you're based in the US and you talk to innovators in the US and you have talked with innovators in India. Do you think that there is a difference in mindset amongst the founders and innovators in the US versus India? Is there an opportunity for innovators in India to learn from? We can't hear you yet.
Sorry about that. I had my line on mute. So yeah, I was going to say that it's a bit of a tricky question, but I will handle it the best I can. So I think fundamentally there is no difference. When it comes to the entrepreneur, there is no difference. Entrepreneurs come with ideas. You have different levels of understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve, and they all want to see their idea get funded and be successful and be available in the market. So I don't think I see much of a difference there. And with my limited sample set, I can tell you that the entrepreneurs that I met in the last 12 months in India, on the average, are much younger. I'm just seeing a much younger population wanting to get into building their own companies, building their own solutions, and so on and so forth. I would probably say that in terms of how they even sound or their understanding of the ecosystem that they are in, more or less things are all at par, because I think everybody pretty much has access to the same Google, right? I don't think that is an issue. I think where there might be a difference is that the Indian entrepreneur jumps and solves the problem a lot faster, a lot earlier in the cycle than perhaps what I have seen as people engage, probably because the average age is older, right, in terms of what I've seen here. And I would probably get to the solution space on this and encourage people to, even if it's 3 engineers dropouts from BITS Pilani or some IIT or some other engineering institutions and so forth, is to force yourself to go talk to people outside of your engineering bubble. You have to get out in the street, understand the market, understand the customers. I think that's been hammered a couple of times. That to me is probably the one area where there could be a lot more support and help in terms of training people to get out there and build their skills.
All right. Thank you so much. Lokesh, coming to you. WDC Venture Capital has been functioning in the US and in India. Right. India is a little bit more recent. It's been around outside of India for quite some time. Is there a difference in the way you approach the market amongst different geographies?
First of all, I agree with the panelists, all the panelists who said there is a tremendous opportunity in India right now, and this is an opportune moment for somebody to start a chip design startup or something right now. I mean, we have been investing as Western Digital Capital in US and Israel from quite a long time. 50-50, it's like 50% in the US, 50% in Israel. Given the opportunity that India is present today, we started Western Digital Capital about a year and a half back. We don't necessarily see a difference in approach between India and the US. We have been investing in a broad spectrum of companies. Risk5, I mean, as a strategic investor, for us, what is important is the company is close to the core of what we make. That's data storage. Anything that impacts data storage from the hardware perspective or the cost optimization or the performance, or a story that builds around data explosion, which eventually leads to usage of data storage. That is what we look at when we invest in a company. And from a startup perspective, what exactly do we look at? I call it PTM. One is the product, which is the core IP the product has, the company has, what the strength of the product, the strength of the IP that they have. T is the team, Chinnu talked about it. We usually look at complementary skill sets, not usually more than 1 or 2 or 3 co-founders, because this industry requires that skill sets from the product to GTM to any other thing. And the third one is the market potential, which is more from a customer side, customer validation, how big the market is. Okay. We have invested, like I said, in multiple different companies. To quote a few examples across the spectrum, Patient Capital, we invested in a company called Iridia, which is a DNA storage company. It's probably a couple of decades away. It's not necessarily coming in tomorrow or 5 years from now, but it is something that has a potential, and we see a way to support the DNA storage. It's like a synthetic DNA. It's like how you store in a structure of a synthetic DNA.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm getting these kinds of signals from the master of ceremonies here, so I need to wrap this up. But instead of me wrapping it up, I'm going to ask each one of you the same exact question, and I'm requesting a one-word answer for 2 parts of the question. So if we have a group of innovators here and entrepreneurs here, what sector or segment do you think, in your opinion, has the highest potential in India, in innovators in India? And second, what is one core function or one trait that the innovator should focus on?
Electric vehicle, you had to be a hustler. You had to be
resilient.
Resilient. Okay, so you had to be relentless.
Relentless, resilient. All right.
Well, I'd say for the audience here, AI and VLSI, think about leapfrogging everything else everybody is doing. Think of AI, think of applying ML techniques and bring innovation at a global scale. So I would say, again, creativity out of box. And the second word is persistent. Don't give up. It's going to be hard. Don't give up.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say batteries and IC design, the areas that you could focus on.
Just pull it on.
Batteries and IC design, they are the areas that you could focus on. What is needed from the startup founders, not one word, but long-term commitment in addition to the persistence and the things.
Shom?
Yeah, I'd probably slightly broaden up and say, hey, overall climate tech sustainability, I think the world needs it. And from India, we need very innovative solutions that are cost competitive, right? And the second piece, I would probably say you have to be an eternal optimist, being a founder.
All right. Okay, Shiva.
Yeah, I would say the elephant in the room is climate change and energy. I think those are two related topics, but I think those are probably the largest areas of innovation that's going to drive humanity for the next 20 or 30 years. And the one word is business model. Remember that investors will take a risk on a lot of things. They take risk on people, they take risk on technology, they might even take risk on markets, but they don't take risk on business model. So make sure that you really understand what that actually means.
All right, thank you so much. Do we have time for any questions or we don't?
Yeah, just two questions.
Just two questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
and other questions offline. Yeah, the mic will come to you. Two questions.
So the
and
first
then
two hands I saw, one hand here and one hand there. So if we can take those two questions. Somehow we need to get a mic over there.
Yeah, no, he'll go. Yeah.
The gentleman in your jacket, please stay standing because they haven't seen you yet.
Just stand up, yeah. I'll nodi mele. Yure. Yeah, give it here first and then innond mic tagond
So please state your name and direct a question to a specific person if you can.
My name is N. Vijayanand from TriSpace Technologies Private Limited. My question is for Mr. Ram from Qualcomm Ventures. I have a question for you regarding what is the stomach or appetite Qualcomm would have to change its Snapdragon platform to have a RISC-V core instead of an ARM core.
Okay, can I? You're getting into something that is about Qualcomm's strategy?
No, because I have some technology solution which can fit into that actually. So that my question is just as an investment, would we invest?
I think this question needs to be taken offline because this is about Qualcomm's business strategy, not really Qualcomm investment strategy. Yeah.
My name is Abhishek. I'm from Google. So my question is a fab or is operating a fab, does it subscribe to the VC model? And if it doesn't, what would it take for a VC to invest in order to build a fab, a semiconductor fab in India?
Okay, who's brave enough to take this? First of all, do you want to specify what do you mean by fab? Are you talking of a wafer fab? Are you talking of packaging? Are you talking of testing?
I mean anything, but let's start with the wafer fab.
All right, you chose the biggest one.
Yeah.
I think, should I go? Go ahead. Yeah. So I think, the VC, if you look at the investment world, there is a private equity, growth stage, then VC. Typically, the VC investment is disruptive idea, scaling. So if you're talking about fab, probably that fits into PE investment. Financial PE investment, correct?
Okay.
But even within the fab, that if you're talking about, say, I have been a strong believer that India should focus on analog fab or maybe like a 28 nanometer or maybe 18 nanometer node or whatever it is, I forgot actually, but older node.
Yeah.
So you can demonstrate there is a need and also you can demonstrate the cost effectiveness actually.
Yeah.
So, but again, to answer your question, it probably would not fit a VC model, would fit more into PE model actually.
Yeah, because it's more like there is a lot of economy of scale involved, but then if you take multiple small designs and small to medium sized designs rather than doing billions of wafers.
Yes, we agree.
Okay.
At the end of the day, any fab and so forth is a return on capex. We are basically trying to do a return on innovation, right? Okay. So that's the difference.
Understood.
Fab is usually a government investment, very, very high scale. VC investment doesn't fit into the fab kind of environment.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think she's very keen. Last question.
Oh, there's one more. Okay, we must.
Yeah, good afternoon. I am Shivangi. I'm working as a research scholar in SENSE IISc. I have one question, and that is, with VC's perspective, how does a venture capitalist look for an investment in process innovation rather than a system innovation? A process innovation or a process efficiency which could be enabling the delivery chain to B2B or B2C?
So this is in the semiconductor process or which process?
Semiconductor process and the semiconductor chip or design which has been made or a product to the customer.
So we do invest in B2B. We don't invest in B2C, but if there is a process innovation, we still invest actually, because at the end of the day, you have to demonstrate you can deliver in a superior way and cost-effective way. If you are able to demonstrate there is a market, yes, we will look at it.
Okay, so is there any, in nutshell, you can tell a key point which entrepreneur who is aspiring for process innovation can look upon and should take care?
So again, going back to what Siva was talking about, the business model matters. See, we typically look at a company whether it has the potential in their lifetime to give a 10x return actually, correct? So as long as it meets the criteria, definitely if there is a process innovation, we do encourage that.
Thank you.
All right, I guess that's it, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists.
Before we leave all of you, I would request the Executive Director of SIDAC Noida, Mr. Vivek Kaneja, to kindly come over and give a mementos to the moderator and the speakers. And of course, we would like to thank Mr. Shiva, who has joined online. To Mr. Shiva, it will be sent across online. So thank you very much for all the panelists for an enlightening discussion. With this, we come to the end of today's deliberations. And please have your lunch, and you can collect your kits, whatever is there is at the reception. All the students, please note, and your kits will be given to you. So please have lunch and head back to your respective destinations safely and securely. Namaskara, all of you. Please take care. And there is one announcement before you all leave. Just hang on for a moment. Yeah. Yes, I was just looking at you. Since there was no sign from you, I just made this final. Just hang on for a minute, all the participants.
So, as our Honorable Minister of State, Shri Rajiv Chandrasekharji has given in the presentation that we have a committee chaired by Madam Jaya Jagdish, who had come out with the requirements, future requirements of skill required from in the academic institutions, industry and startups to enable the semiconductor ecosystem. So the report is available with us. If anybody wants to collect the report, we have the copies. You are welcome to collect it from here, from the stage. Thank you.